let me ask you this. Is it better
overall, I have
or
to say
worse
that.
than Name of the Wind?
Name of the Wind's... This book is devoid of character conflict.
I don't think I remember a book you've given in on this whole podcast. Welcome to a special episode of To the Ramble. I'm Austin.
I'm Richard.
We started this podcast reviewing The Way of Kings back in March of 2022. It's now 2025. This is coming out end of January of 2025. What a journey it's been for us as a podcast.
You meant, I think first episode, we talked about how our biggest goal was, some of our biggest goals, was one, to get an early copy, to get an arc of Wind and Truth.
Did we?
We did not. We were sent books after the release date. We came home after Dragonsteel.
Several books.
Several books arrived at our doorstep. Thank you, by the way, Tor and Dragonsteel. I think each sent them.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. But then our other score was, hey, we want to interview Sanderson.
Did we do that?
No, we did not.
So this is a special review still because
it is. We've been waiting years for this.
Stormlight Book 5, Wind and Truth. You saw by the title, this will be spoiler-free, spoiler-full, but spoiler-free for the first, we'll see how long. It might be 20, it might be a little longer of a spoiler-free section.
Who knows?
But this is going to be a long video. We will be diving deep into our thoughts. You've seen other people's thoughts. Maybe you just finished the book. Maybe you're looking at this sometime in the future. And what was it like, this big release event for big fans of Sanderson who went to Dragonsteel, have given him boatloads of money. We love the guy.
I do want to preface that is I'm a huge Sanderson fan. We both are. We've given the man so much money.
And so deservingly.
Deservingly so. Yes. Our channel started because of The Way of Kings. I got back into reading.
Likewise.
Because of The Way of Kings.
Yeah.
This comes out of a place of love that we're going to be talking about.
You are priming the audience right now. Just like,
yeah.
Let's make sure we don't push buttons. And then...
Oh, no. We're prep. See, the buttons are there. Mm-hmm. We're cleaning them with alcohol, ready to be pressed.
Yes. That's why I hate needles. See, the alcohol is just, that's the doctor faking you out. And it's going, oh, it's going to be okay. And no, it's not okay.
It's never okay.
So we always like to start these with, how do we even start a book 5 type of one? I mean, everybody knows Sanderson. If you don't, Brandon Sanderson, his Cosmere. We will be giving, in the spoiler-free section, talking books 1 through 4.
Nothing else. I won't be spoiling anything else in the Cosmere itself, but books 1 through 4 of Stormlight Archive are on the table.
For right now, just so we can recap, catch up to speed before we actually, we're going to talk thoughts. So just catching up to speed. Books 1 through 4, Rhythm of War ends. Where are we coming from with Wind and Truth?
So Rhythm of War ends off with Dalinar Kholin, debate, finally confronting Odium and gets his contest of champions. And they agree on a contest in 10 days' time. And in 10 days, the battle lines are drawn. No matter who wins or loses, Odium is still confined to Roshar. But if Odium wins, Dalinar becomes his. And he also gets to keep Kholinar and some small additions. But if Dalinar wins, Kholinar becomes theirs, and that's basically but no matter who wins or loses, the war ends, and Odium will cease hostilities with the humans.
And so we've been coming in from book 4. Last came out in 2020. This came out end of 2024. A lot of theorizing. We've been on other channels. We were talking with Bookborn, having theorizing videos with her, all sorts of stuff. And the hype going into book 5, have you seen more excitement, more hype going into a book in our 3 years on BookTube?
Sure.
2.5 years.
In our time on BookTube, no.
Right.
This has been the most hyped book that since we've been here. Of course, in
our space, yeah.
Harry Potter, book 7, is definitely more hyped, of course. And there's been other books as well. But for us, this has been the most well-anticipated book.
it's kind of cool because this is the book every booktuber out there is reading. It's cool because you can, if you read the book, you're going to look up reviews online and see everybody's got one. We're a little bit late to the party, but this will be a long one.
Yeah.
And now to kind of, people are done with this, to push into the general thoughts you're seeing online from other people. What have you seen?
Okay. Across the interwebs.
Yes.
I don't think I've found a single person that says this is their favorite Stormlight book. At the bare minimum, everyone who says they really like it, generally most people, it's not their favorite.
I think Kendall from our Patreon, it's her favorite.
It is her
I believe
favorite.
It's her favorite. And that might have changed since
she
initially,
is
but
1 in a million. From at least online on all of the different booktubers, all the review sites that I've been looking at, doesn't seem to be people's favorite. And there's also a lot of other people there that are saying that this is fundamentally not, like, it's one of Sanderson's worst. So that's kind of the range.
You're seeing people like Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews gave it 2 stars online. Bookborn gave it 4.5 stars. Daniel Green gave it a 7.5 out of 10. All in that range of like below disappointed, didn't like it, to liked it. There's every book review I've seen of this has started with the flaws. Started with the here's this, but look at this accomplishment and scope and scale and all that. Sanderson has also gone, we'll talk about this in the Prose section later in the spoiler review, so I'll just hint at this. Sanderson's gone on Reddit and commented to a lot of the feedback from the fans and a lot of the criticism from the fans, and he's addressed that and his thoughts. We'll dive all into that. But you read those thoughts.
Yes.
So he's also aware that this book has gotten more criticism than definitely his other Stormlights. I kind of went into this book thinking, but I want to see your expectations. My expectations were Rhythm of War is my least favorite. I gave Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and Oathbringer all 5 stars. Floored me. I gave Rhythm of War a 3.75 stars. Real good, but I saw there were some flaws there, and I was like, this is not my favorite Stormlight. I expected this book not to top Oathbringer because that's my favorite. I expected this to be number 2. I would say I definitely didn't think, and maybe it did. Who knows? I definitely didn't think it would be below Rhythm of War for me. I was like, okay, it's going to be at least my 4th favorite. What did you go in expecting?
I was thinking a similar vein.
Yeah.
Though I was even thinking maybe this would be my favorite. I don't know. Because during my reread, I actually really liked Rhythm of War a lot more than I did the first time.
That's awesome.
And a lot of that is I knew what I liked and didn't like from the book, and so I focused a lot more on the fun stuff.
On the Navani stuff, yeah.
Basically, yeah. I hyper-focused on that stuff, and I really liked it. My thoughts are roughly similar of, like, the flaws, the good stuff, like, everything basically stayed the same, but my enjoyment overall, my experience reading it was pretty good. I enjoyed the stuff that I liked more that time. So you recently did a reread too within the past 2 months. Yeah.
So you're coming in fresh. I did not reread, so that cool perspective too. I last read these 2 years ago, year and a half ago was the last time I read them. You read them years ago and reread them.
Yep.
So also get those kind of perspectives going.
Yeah.
Now, spoiler-free thoughts, Rich. We gave the overview. Anything else you want to give an overview before we just get into our personal feelings? What else did we miss? We have, I missed this. This is a good thing I mentioned this. On Goodreads, it's so far the lowest rated Stormlight book, and that's after the initial release, so it's only going to go down from there most likely.
And also you do have to factor in, this is the 5th book of a series. Often
only the fans
rate this. Like, generally on Goodreads, the longer the series goes, there's less reviews, and so that one will be weighted higher, generally, most of the time.
Definitely. Like the book ones usually get the most flack.
Yeah.
But in Stormlight's case, not at all. Actually, the first book's pretty highly rated too. And on our Patreon, go check out our link in the description below if you want to join our book club. We did 2 Wind and Truth talks because one you hosted, then I finished later and I hosted one. Our current book club of the month is Blood Over Brighthaven, if you guys want to join for that. With Wind and Truth, our general thoughts from the patrons, what feeler did you get? Anything stick out to you from their thoughts?
Generally from our patrons that I was talking with after our kind of unpackaging of Wind and Truth, it was a negative. We were a bunch of negative Nancys. There were a lot of negative Nancys in that group. There was a couple positives there that they were singing his praises, but definitely more negative than not.
There were a lot of the people. So Carson, shout out to Carson. We met him at Dragonsteel as well, and Rachel loved the book, gave it 5 stars, I believe. But people like Carson and others even rated it highly, like 4.5 stars. But for some reason, even the people that rated higher, everybody started with maybe that's just our energy. We're starting with the complaints.
True. We infected the negative Nancy's
a little bit. So maybe that was it. But again, prefacing this all with we're big Stormlight fans, big Sanderson fans. I mean, clearly, from all the merchandise, our whole channel. Now, spoiler-free thoughts. What did you think about the book without spoiling?
My rating? My official rating?
What's your official Ramble rating? Then say why overall that is your rating.
My official Ramble rating, overall score, is a 1.75 out of 5. Very flawed is what I would give it. That pains me.
I don't think I remember a book you've given in the ones on this whole podcast.
Yeah.
This is the...
I want to explain, this was hard for me of how much, like, am I being biased? I'm trying to be objective in it.
Oh my God.
But here's my experience. If not for this BookTube channel, I would have DNF'd the book. I would not have finished this book if not for BookTube. Many points where I was like, I'd rather read something else. I was done.
Rich, because we kept, just for our audience here, we've said general thoughts to each other, but we've not gone through Wind and Truth and been like, here's what we think, here's our ratings. The genuine 1.75 is you know why I feel so good about that?
Why?
I thought I was going to be the harsh one, which I still will.
Yeah.
2.5 stars from me. I was disappointed by this book.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to agree with everything. It's like, my God, I just typically
I was crazy. I'm reading this going,
this is gonna be a fun discussion.
Is something off? Like, it was something wrong with me. Like,
7.5.
I've read a bunch of I was reading some indie books and things where maybe my expectations weren't as high, but I had just so much more fun. And maybe my expectations for Sanderson are just a little bit higher. But
let me ask you this: is it better
overall, I have
or worse than Name of the Wind?
Name of the Wind's
This is
it's close.
This is fascinating to watch.
It's freaking close.
I hope people aren't just audio only. I hope they can see your face.
That's the thing is, it's about in line. It's about in line with what I rated Name of the Wind. Name of the Wind, I can ask, I have a lot of praises for it. It's well written. It's a well written story. I was never sucked out, and I was never my immersion was never broken in Name of the Wind. I just didn't like the characters, or the plot was a little bit boring. And then overall, the theme was, I think, flawed. But I was in the world. I didn't like the characters, but the writing was beautiful. I had emotional impact there.
But for Wind and Truth, keeping without spoiling, so to actually get why is that your rating? Why would you say you gave it that low?
I'll say my highest score out of all of our categories is The World.
Okay.
And I don't even have it that particularly high that I would expect for a Sanderson book. But everything else is below, it's below a 3.
Okay.
Almost everything else. I genuinely think the writing is pretty bad, and more so, this book is devoid of character conflict. It's my number one complaint of this entire book. My favorite parts of the book, of where I actually had a good time, was when characters actually had a personal conflict, where there was some friction between characters, and that was enjoyable.
My personal favorite moment, which we'll get into later, is a Yesna moment.
Same.
That was your favorite too, right?
That tied with a little something else.
Okay. We'll talk about that in spoilers.
Relatively enjoyable overall because of the personal conflict.
Got it.
I think most of this book, what actually pissed me off, was so many moments of just everyone being so self-aware, so kind, understand where I was blown away that there felt like very little friction or conflict, even where there really should be. It was just,
in the end of the world.
I understand. And I was bored. I was bored by all of the characters. It bored me to tears.
I have a quote for you from the Way of Kings, and I think it encapsulates some of my thoughts. In the Way of Kings, Brandon Sanderson says this: "The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon." I don't think Sanderson follows his own advice here. And a lot of this book, his entire themes coming up to this book is journey before destination. And how I'd encapsulate Wind and Truth is the destination makes sense. The destination is logical. And I'm actually, you just tell me, hey, this is what happens in the book and that's the ending. I could go, oh yeah, how do we get there? The journey part is the problem. These books being as long as they are, that's why I love Stormlight Books too, because it's a long ass journey.
Now,
and then you get that catharsis, that Sanderlanche that hits you.
That is another factor to this.
Yeah.
This is the longest Sanderson book written. It was, Sanderson talked about how he had to get, this was the limit that he was allowed to publish in print, that they're not allowed to print one additional page.
One.
Like this
is that true? I didn't know that.
He had to argue to get this length of book approved. They tried to get him to cut it down. He wouldn't. The longer a book is, a little bit less credence I'm getting at it. Of you better justify the page count to me.
Yeah.
It's a 1,300 page book. It better be justified at 1,300 pages.
Right before we sat down, Rich picked up The Way of Kings, and it looks tiny compared to Wind and Truth.
Tight. That's a tight, condensed
Way
story
of Kings
there.
looks like, wow, he shaved off. I can only imagine. This is an entire book longer, 100,000 words longer than...
If you took the same story and you cut it in half, I'm going to give a little less. I'm going to be a little less harsh overall.
Yeah.
Its length needs to be justified for me overall. I'm a little bit nicer, I guess, overall to shorter books in general. The longer, or maybe I'm not even nicer, but I'm just more critical of a longer book. You better justify that page count. I think there's very little reason for longer page counts on books. Sometimes it is, sometimes justified. In this case, it is not.
I was just looking up the word counts for you. Wind and Truth is just under 500,000 words. Way of Kings is 380 something thousand.
Yeah.
And it got longer book by book by book. But again, Oathbringer was longer than Way of Kings. Oathbringer is still phenomenal. It's about justifying the page count. What is the journey itself? I have to say another big complaint of mine, which you gave it lower. So I don't know if my complaint, like you gotta up my complaints. You gave 2.5, disappointing.
2.5. Okay. Yeah.
I'm disappointed.
I'm way.
And there's something that keeps that up because I will sing some things that I did like. And so it kept me from going lower. So I will say this too. One of the big issues as well is it's what I would call the MCUification of the Cosmere. What I mean by that, again, without spoiler, we're still in spoiler free. It's going to be a little longer spoiler free. What I mean by that is the humor and also it not feeling like a Stormlight humor should be and almost breaking world characters. It's the humor bits about it. It's the broad not the broad appeal, but it's kind of like the paint by numbers, I would say, of it doesn't feel like the same book Way of Kings was. Like whereas it feels different. And I think a part of that is the modernity of it too. It feels like a lot more modern than just the world in general. And it doesn't feel like Roshar as much as it feels like this is now, and which he intentionally did too. He talks about this. He intentionally is making it more from fantasy to sci-fi. We'll talk about all that in the world section too, but it feels more modern, this MCUification of, and I have a whole bunch of things I'll talk about emotional impact, but that's another thing I got taken away of like, oh my God, is this the same series I love?
That was actually a chief reason why I wanted to put it down is I had a moment of going like, talk about why do we read books and why don't we have a movie or TV show podcast. In general, I don't watch that much TV and I don't watch that many movies. The movies I go to now are like, friends want to go see, some action
You watch
movie.
movies with me, right?
I'll watch movies with you.
Thanks, bud.
Or we watch Oscar movies, real pretentious ass, but I'm mostly disappointed with most of what Hollywood puts out there. I'm incredibly dulled by I think the writing is overall bad in the industry. Like across the board, there's occasional exceptions that peek their head out that actually are pretty good and somewhat subtle and actually have some hint of skill to it. But most movies? I don't find it. MCU is one of those things of I am so sick of it.
I think there's... Okay.
I can't. The only movie I've actually, I think, like walked out of was an MCU movie. I'm just so bored.
Was it Ant-Man and
Ant-Man and the Wasp?
Quantumania,
yeah. And I had that moment several times, and like by the third time having it in Wind and Truth, I really wanted to put it down. That was a moment of we'll talk about like a specific moment that if not for this channel, I wouldn't have finished.
Now, I will say, on top of as much negativity as there is, and I have plenty of more complaints to come, something that I did enjoy, why it's not a 1-star, is the scale and scope and the ability for Sanderson to have this series, and not in the totality, but in Wind and Truth, he put enough in there for me to be excited still about Roshar things and connecting and Cosmere. And it did give me a sense of like, wow, he thought this through. Yeah. He planned this in a way that I could see it being satisfying if it did other things in the journey. Again, it does end in a logical way, so I had to give it credit of these are still the characters I love. Yes, they're the shell who they once were. They are not. They don't feel the same. But some of that emotional attachment from the rest of the series pulled me through, and there were the moments like with Yasna that I liked, and I will say the villain in the story I did quite like as well. And there was some better things than in the prior Stormlight books, especially with the villain. But that's me just giving some positives.
Yes and no. I did have my positive moments, then there's the ending stuff that ruffles my feathers.
I'm just trying not to be all negative, Nancy.
Of course.
And right before, Rich, because we're long spoiler-free section, we have a quick break that we want to give to our sponsor, Skillshare. I have my glasses on, Richard, and I know often you come to me for advice, and the audience does too. So if you want some advice, what? You don't want me to teach you?
No.
Why?
Because Austin has nothing to teach you or I. Go to Skillshare instead, where actual experts like Emily Gold could teach you things like how to become a better creative writer. She actually has a 10-day journaling challenge for those out there who actually want to test their skills and see the benefit of journaling.
Okay, yeah. Although I am a fantastic professor, I'll admit Skillshare does have a lot to offer. It's the largest online community for creatives, and I'm laughing because I'm also a great community leader as well. But Skillshare also is. You can find thousands of classes on Skillshare.com if you want to learn from experts on illustration, novel crafting, design, film, and more.
And Skillshare actually has a great offer right now. So for the first 500 people that join Skillshare using our link in the description, you get 1 month of premium membership for free.
And for the first person to comment below, Austin, you're a great professor, I will respond with 27 heart emojis.
Or don't. You don't have to do it. Just check out check out Skillshare and link in the description.
Yeah,
don't comment.
Okay.
Don't comment.
Back to the episode. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring us. So we also have something fun for you, audience, here, if you're already sticking around. Rich and I had a bet.
We did.
We had a bet.
Going into this book,
yeah,
we bet each other on a certain character's death.
Well, we could say because book 1 through 4, they should have read at this point.
Exactly. So I thought that Kaladin was going to die in Wind and Truth.
And I thought Kaladin was going to live in Wind and Truth.
So after debating what we were going to do as punishment, we settled on the following before we picked up the book, before we even, as we were going to Dragonsteel, we were discussing it. And so we came to the conclusion that if Kaladin does die, then Austin here has to dress up as Syl for the remainder of the spoiler section of our Wind and Truth review,
which you'll see in a couple minutes.
One of the biggest, one of our biggest reviews for however many hours it'll be.
Who knows?
But that's the punishment.
Yep.
And if Kaladin lives, I would have to dress up as Shallan for the remaining part of the review. So that's the bet. So you will know whether or not Kaladin lives or dies in Wind and Truth after we cut to our spoiler section. Yep. So that's a big spoiler. So if you don't want to be spoiled of that will be how you can tell.
Yes, it will. Do you have any other thoughts you want to get in the spoiler-free section before one of us dresses up?
Yeah.
Overall,
I feel this was one of the hardest things for me to review. I just want to stress that I am such a fan of Sanderson, the man, the writer, but all of the cool aspects of the hopeful stuff for the Cosmere.
Yeah.
All the things that I actually agree with, hey, this is a cool place to leave it. And this leaving interesting threads to pull on later on that I am interested in. the writing ability with this, both characters and prose wise, disappointed me so badly that even if those other wider Cosmere things are interesting, I'm probably not going to pick up those future Cosmere books immediately.
Rich, I know. Did a part of you?
I'm gonna have to wait until I hear some other reviewers talk about it, some friends talk, because it pushed me to the point of like, I'm no longer I gotta read Sanderson the second his new book drops. I'm no longer that level of fan. Like, that's how much this hurt.
Also, I know you. I think a little bit of you saw Matt's fantasy book reviews give a 2-star, and you're like, I gotta top him. You can't just let him just lay it on you like that.
Exactly. I had to go. No.
You are the biggest critic.
I'm the real hater.
You're the real. It's a competition. He'll come up with an updated review of a 1.5 star.
Course.
And then what would you do? 1.25.
1.25. We're just gonna keep dropping it.
So I kind of want to end with our category feelings. You said the best was World.
Yeah, the best for me was World.
I would agree. I think the best thing it does is world building. I still have complaints. The worst categories for you, category or categories. Do you want to go first from that?
You go first.
I actually think prose is the second worst category. I was most disappointed. This is why the book especially went lower. The thought-provokingness for which when we're doing that, it's the themes and message of the story. Not only is it not nuanced, I think it is genuinely bad. Like the actual message that comes across in this book, I really want to passionately talk about because it's frustrating. It's actually frustrating.
Yeah.
So you agree with that?
Completely.
Okay.
Well,
because
my
again,
lowest.
I don't know because we haven't gone into this, so I'm excited to actually pick your brain on.
So am I.
Oh God.
My lower scores were definitely like emotional impact for the pure part of we're talking about. Did we jump for joy? Did the emotions that it's intending to evoke? Did it get it from us, or did it get the opposite? Several times I wanted to put the book down, and the moments that should have been, I should have been jumping for joy. I should have been cheering. Did not land for me. I acknowledge that going like, yeah, in a different book, in a different journey, I would have cheered this. But the journey I just went on doesn't deserve the cheer for this ending, for our characters and for the plot. But that, and I also think prose was pretty abysmal. So those are the things we'll talk.
We'll talk about all that. Leaving it on the again. If you liked Wind and obviously let your feelings be known down below.
I hope you guys liked it.
Yeah,
but because I can think of nothing worse than like one of these biggest fantasy series. Like going through this, it's a big investment. I don't want anyone to get into the final book of this big series I invested in and be incredibly disappointed with it. Like I wouldn't want to. I'm really hoping people liked it. But I'm just one that really didn't.
Obviously, you wanted to like it too. The thing is, nobody wants to go. Nobody ever wants to read a book. It's a rare creature out there that does this and just is actively trying to hate it.
Yeah.
So the disappointment comes from a place of love because it's my God. This is Stormlight has my favorite books written right now. Like Way of Kings, Oathbringer, Words of Radiance. Like these are some of my favorite things.
On my reread, Way of Kings went up.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
I just thinking about like it. I will say, I think Way of Kings on reread, I think has topped Oathbringer for me. I liked Way of Kings that much.
Wow.
Because especially now on reflection.
I mean, they're all 5 stars.
My previous comment about Shallan, I really enjoyed Shallan on a reread in Way of Kings. And it just kind of fixed a lot of my issues where I'm going like, man, on a reread, this is fantastic.
I also love it in hindsight because we won't talk about Way of Kings first. We're going to have a whole Stormlight talk. But I think we should give our spoiler warning.
Yep.
So big spoiler warning here. Click off if you do not want Wind and Truth spoilers. Rich and I, we're going to have to get changed. Do you want to do a little YouTube cut like where we jump in our seats?
Sure.
And see who gets into new outfits here?
Yeah, let's try it out.
All right, ready?
All right.
3, 2, 1.
So we both lost. Oh, God.
So Kaladin technically is buried.
His corpse is found and buried.
But technically, he's a herald.
He's alive as a herald.
And to come back.
He'll come back at some point. Now, is he going to come back in just all Kaladin Stormblessed glory? Or
I don't know.
And like fight with a spear? Or is he going to be like, come on back, like, oh my God, Kaladin Stormblessed, the herald. He goes, I'm here to solve your mental woes. Come sit on my couch. But Kaladin, a battle's going on. No. That's for other people less cool than me. I'm going to talk about your feelings.
Now, do you think people can take you seriously, your 1.75 score?
No.
By the way, you're not Richard right now. You are Raquel.
Oh, okay.
You're
Ostina.
Rachel.
Got it.
We're going maybe Ricarda.
Ostina.
It works.
Yes.
So, emotional impact, what'd you give it out of 5 stars?
Emotional impact. 1.5. Bad.
Wow.
It's hard to... I can't give anything...
It's hard for me to give it. I gave it
2.5
stars. Disappointing. So why'd you give 1.5?
I wanted to drop the book.
You would have DNF'd this.
I would have DNF'd it if not for YouTube. So hard for me to give that kind of book higher than a 1.5. Like for emotional impact, especially. Like I wanted to stop.
When we're talking emotional impact, we're going, hey, the intended emotion wants to make you feel. What's it going for? Is it making you feel that? What do you think When in Truth is? It's epic fantasy.
It's epic fantasy.
It wants you to feel the epic, the grandness, and you didn't feel that.
Exactly. There were plenty of big emotional moments where I should have been invested, and I was not. The ending to me made sense. And a lot of the big moments made sense, but I was not invested.
Do you want to sandwich this? Because maybe I can help do the middle of the sandwich.
Sure.
Start with, I guess the big thing left off on there was the MCUification. I think that covers a lot of thoughts in the emotions that were felt. Couple examples of that. Some of the humor thing that's brought up.
Yeah.
People are talking about, so the humor in this book, how did you feel? Did that land? Did it feel jarring? Why are people saying it's MCU-like?
I think it's right off the bat, we got to say that the humor felt very modern day humor. A lot of terms that were never used in Stormlight before are now used. So like curse words are...
We have germs, shit, slut, gang up on, let's go kick some fused ass. Oh, that's just some of them. Therapist.
Well, that's not much of the joke, but there's a line in there I remember just groaning, where Kaladin says like, oh, what's Syl doing? Like someone says, what's Syl doing? And Kaladin says, oh, that's just Syl doing Syl things. I'm like, it's so modern language and it comes out of nowhere and it breaks. But the joke that got me, the best joke in the book was Wit.
Yeah.
Wit. No, not Wit himself, but Wit at like the fake Wit.
Existential crisis.
The existential crisis of like, wait a minute, but Wit would know that he was actually, but so am I supposed, and he just didn't know how to play his part. And I loved, that was funny. That was genuinely funny. Other than that, no, I didn't laugh at all.
A lot of that because sometimes the jokes in here, like the Syl crotch humor that was brought up. So a lot of the stuff early on, it's not that humor is even not funny or funny. It's humor subjective. I think for the broad appeal on the emotional impact here, just felt like different than the previous Stormlight books. Specifically, go beyond humor, sex. And like in Stormlights, it's always sided to and so forth. But in this, it was also a lot more like the word sex was actually used. Yes, none, wit. We're in the bedroom there. We have more clear, lift goggling at men like this. All that, even funny, not funny, using certain, like sure, maybe that's Lift's character. But for a Stormlight book, it was to go from the previous 4 books we got and then it to be more on the nose. Like some of it just felt different now. Did you feel the same?
Yeah, it did feel different. Now, I do think like the Shallan and Adeline, I noticed it because, it's the difference of
Shallan and Adeline.
Never... Sanderson never addresses that specifically. I think it's the first time the word like sex is actually used. It's always alluded to. In this one, I was like, clearly, oh, okay, Shallan's going to get pregnant from this, of course. Like, that's why it was mentioned to me. And then by the end of the book, it actually is pretty much confirmed that Shallan's pregnant. So I was like, okay. But yeah, that and many other things, I predicted so many parts in this book. I do feel a little bit vindicated of our theories and stuff was just so correct. I can't think of anything where I was really off base.
Shallan's mom.
Oh,
okay. Let's talk real emotional.
I was right on Gavinor being the Odium's champion. I knew it, called it.
Did you think it would happen in that way?
Yeah.
With that time jump?
Yes.
Really?
Well, no, I just knew I didn't know about the time jump, but I knew Gavinor was going to be the champion.
You did? Were you excited for that if you knew it?
No, not particularly. I could have been, but I just think it was, I get it. It just made the most sense to what to happen. And especially, I knew it before, and then especially when he was like thrown into the spirit realm with Dalinar, I was like, yeah, of course.
Got it. I'll just say to put a knot on so we don't talk MCU the whole time, just the over-explanation of things, the Odium being a Thanos level threat, broad appeal, and also a lot of it felt that MCU callbacks of Avengers movie happens, and then start to call. A lot of this was in visions, looking back at other things we've already seen. Of course, it's building world in many ways, and you're seeing when the Recreants and Honor and all that happens, but a lot of the scenes that we'd already seen were being shown in this book, which, just as a premise for emotionally for you, how did you, complaint. How many characters' point of views were in visions of Dalinar, Navani's? We had Shallan's, we had Renarins and Relane's, and vision. And so a lot of it was focused just in that plot line.
I just didn't like the whole spirit cognitive realm at all. I didn't like any of them. See, I don't like it in concept. It just was not fun for the book, especially it just went on so long. Like the entire Dalinar stuff was just him seeing interludes.
I'll throw in something.
That was it.
I guess so. You're feeling so negative that if you could like express why that low, like what's the thing? Is it you're encapsulating thought? Britt, let's go to a specific scene. Why didn't it work?
Where should we start?
What do you feel most passionate about? Because I have some to talk about, but I want to see like for you. You gave this lower. So what's something? Why'd you hate it? Like you have a passionate, just wow, this did not work for you.
Okay, so emotional impact. Going down the list of for me, it's like the big character moments that should have landed and just failed for me. Let's go right out of the gate with Kaladin.
Okay.
Kaladin eventually becoming, being this world's first therapist and using that word, that's going to get into Prose factor, but that direction of his character technically makes sense. I understand the direction. It's been set up. It's not like an out of nowhere thing, but it makes me go like, that's nice. But ultimately, not very fun. This is my epic fantasy. This is Kaladin Stormblessed. And his big moment of like, who are you? I'm his therapist. I'm like going, all right, cool. But okay, Kaladin's gone. I'm no longer really interested in Kaladin's character. I'm going like, good for you, Kaladin, and then I don't care. Like, okay, next book. I don't really care about Kaladin in the next book. I'm not that interested. Same with most of the other characters. Adolin was probably the best, but I was also very frustrated that the big point of conflict we get between him and Dalinar, we get one little scene with them actually butting heads, but the rest they're separated. That's the most invested I am. Like the two characters, I want them to actually hash things out and see that friction between them. But no, they're separated for basically the entire book.
So a lot of yours comes back to just the conflict not being there.
There's lack of conflict nearly everywhere. There's internal conflict, but even then the internal conflicts combined with everyone being so self-aware that they understand their own neuroses so completely that it's not very entertaining to see them. It's very frustrating being with any of the characters at any point.
I gotta say, the thing that kept me not like actively hating it as much as you did was being Stormlight Book and a lot of the reveals and progression. I'm invested in I've been invested in the past 4 books, so I was invested to see where this all actually ends. So for me, a lot of it is the ending makes sense, and I'm excited for wider Cosmere things. I think the frustrating parts are Kaladin and Szeth, so let's use that as an example of even chapters dedicated to Kaladin asking Szeth, like, how do you feel?
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about just why this feels different than the previous Stormlight books is nuance and subtlety. As long as the previous books are, Kaladin and Szeth and their journey, even that duo, you finish. Okay, here's a frustrating part. First day, because this is in 10 days in plot, we can break down the 10-day structure. In the first day of this book, we have Kaladin goes to Shallan and Adolin, goes to his parents, goes to the Bridge 4 members, say, we're going to have a drink when we're back. I love you guys. I'll miss you guys. Hey, see you later. I'll be back here.
Whit literally tells him, say goodbye. You're not going to see anyone ever again.
And so I can't believe, because usually with Sanderson in his Sadeas twist in book 1, with that,
fantastic,
floored me. I'm going like, didn't see it coming. You had me believing in Adolin, then believing in Dalinar, who is right. Sadeas hits, and you're like, oh, of course. It was set up so perfectly. Kaladin gives this death signal, or at least herald signal of, I'm not going to be back here. Immediately. So I was sweating going, my God, the bet, I'm losing the bet. And so Kaladin being so on the nose of like, bye everybody. And then on top of that, going on this journey with Szeth, and by the very first interactions with them, you know where it's going. Kaladin's acting as the therapist for Szeth. Szeth is that TN role. So on paper makes sense. Kaladin overcame where
Kaladin is in this book, where he gets to in his journey, feels like where I would want it to be in an epilogue. I'm not interested in that as the full ass book. How
interested in it for all the parts of him just saying he's happy? Yeah. Cal's happy.
Happy now.
Do you think
he's going to be a therapist?
Do you think Sanderson was overcompensating for some of the critiques of Kaladin being depressed for so many of the books? Do you think some part of him was thinking, you know what, Kaladin's been going through it for 4 books. How about I just give a book of him being happy, and then people will love that? Or that's the story he wanted to tell too. I'm not trying to say he's doing this for people, but...
And Kaladin should be happy by the end, of course, but it just makes me go like, oh, that's nice. But ultimately, I don't care anymore. Okay, his journey's over. But by like 3rd, 4th chapter, I'm going like, okay, yeah, Kaladin's journey's over. He's doing he's doing all the therapist stuff. I'm like, yeah, cool. That's nice to think about at the end of the book, end of the series. Kaladin goes off into the sunset. He's happy. And he's now becoming the world's therapist. Awesome. That's great. I don't need a 1,300-page book with that. I don't need it. Of him just constantly going, well, how do you feel? Oh, you should have your choices. It's valid to feel that way. And him just reciting to me the DSM-5.
The worst part about it, too, is it doesn't even feel like Kaladin saying that. It feels like Sanderson is saying that. Yeah. It's everything that Kaladin says, everything that the characters are saying to themselves is so on the nose. It's as if they have modern information.
What actually should have been, and I think he does this a little bit with even the previous books. Kaladin is both a surgeon's son, an apprentice, and also a soldier.
Yeah.
When he was on the battlefield, he uses both minds. When he analyzes people, he analyzes them as a soldier and also as a doctor. What's wrong with him? I would expect that sentence, okay, let's bring in these therapist ideas, but let's have Kaladin think a bit like a soldier. He has a little bit of that moment of how he describes
fighting warrior thoughts.
Yeah. More of that, but rather, how does he address it? How does he actually explain it? How does Kaladin actually think about these problems? How does he actually explain it to Szeth?
Right.
Instead of just citing the DSM-5, why not explain it as a surgeon would? Explain it as a soldier would, and not just use modern terms. To me, the modern terms just spoke out way too much and took me out.
And likewise with, I'll say that for thought-provoking with Szeth and Kaladin's like what the message is getting at. But so Kaladin and Szeth, the Dalinar portions, the most...
Before we move off on that, I think it's real boring that Szeth is just, fighting video game bosses.
Oh, monasteries?
I don't like that plot. That was very boring.
You do like it in Dungeon Crawler Carl, though.
It works there, doesn't work here. It was a boring set, like going, okay, and we're off to the next mini-boss, and we're off to the next mini-boss, and we're off to the next mini-boss. I'm bored. I knew where it was going, and it was boring as hell.
I think some of those fight scenes, the one in Shadesmar that was exciting action. I wasn't as invested in the character stories, but there was I think what it allowed it, again, I'm on the negative side, so I'm trying to get some of the viewers watching too are probably enjoyed it a lot more than we did. I'll say I could see how those action moments and giving Kaladin and Szeth, mainly Szeth, some action scenes is fun. I specifically the one against Posen was I think my favorite action scene with Szeth. That was a cool Shadesmar. Also, it was a 2v1, so the stakes were up the bit. Yeah. Not anywhere close to the duel in Words Radiance, but gave me that kind of fun. Now, that almost broke. So the point with Dalinar, I mean, the big thing we have to talk about is the duel. This whole book being the 10-day structure, looming duel. And I got to say, that was the most disappointing. Why I just put disappointing emotional impact is Gavinor being the challenger, being the champion, and Dalinar having to fight him. Because the philosophical take on it wasn't interesting, and also he avoided it as well, made it so it was this battle of mind and battle of wits, but that wasn't interesting enough. And take that away, you build up for all this time, this duel. I didn't expect it to top like Words of Radiance duel, because I thought he would, I expected him to subvert this, but I expected his subversion.
And technically he did.
He did. I just expected the subversion to be like up the stakes. The problem with this book was the stakes, even from the challenge itself, even from the Odium versus Dalinar, even with those stakes, I'm just kind of going, okay, so it's battle over some territory. Dalinar already joins him or not.
Win or lose, it was not very... I'm going, okay.
And then
even if Dalinar loses.
I'm sorry. That's even why it's so frustrating. The moments where you have like I know it's not the biggest complaint in the world, some of the jokes and all this, and like the lack of conflict and lack of tension throughout. It's like there's 10 days until the end of the world. That's supposed to be this largest stakes ever. I guess I expected going into this book, like day after day of this being a beat of like your heart's racing, like scene after, and it felt a lot more with those longer drawn out, like how are you feeling, and just the pace alone allowed it to go, okay, why are we relaxing? Being very reductive because there's battles.
Why are they relaxing? Because ultimately, win or lose to the champion, it's like, okay, we'll lose Alucard forever, but also we've lost Alucard for several books now. It's not that much tension. And then you add on, actually the battle lines are like getting drawn. Like, I was saying this in our Rhythm of War review.
Yeah.
That I was so confident, like, this can't be the actual full book. I was convinced that the 10 days leading up to the championship would be like the first half of the book or first part of the book. And then something crazy would happen. Because I was thinking to myself, like, okay, those are pretty piss poor stakes. And I was thinking, like, okay, something's going to happen. Dalinar's going to lose, or the deal's going to be broken. Somehow Odium's going to find a way out of it. And now all chaos is breaking loose. And also, I've been thinking for a while now that, like, okay, the fact that all the other shards are like, yeah, Odium's a real threat, but we're fine. We're just letting Roshar handle it. Let them handle it. It's fine. Just keep them there. And going like, yeah, that's not fair. And that's not going to, like, if they actually want to fight, Odium needs to get out. Like, that has to happen. And so I thought this whole framing of the 10-day thing for the whole book, I couldn't believe when it first started that was actually that's the ending. And yeah, it did not work for me.
And with that setting you up for that 10th day and that battle, because if that's the framing of the book, then you go, okay, this battle's got to be worth it.
Yeah.
Whatever this conclusion is. And again, we'll talk, I save more for plot, but the Dalinar ending does make sense. And it's like, I'm excited about Cosmere.
It's
completely logical.
Everything he's set up.
Yep.
Dalinar made the correct choice. All moves on the table. The fact that he was like, hey, look, win or lose, Taravangian is new Odium. Even if I win this, he's going to have 1,000 years to prepare. And then he's going to grow, then he's going to break out of the right of Cosmere. Right now, he's at his weakest. He's new to his power. I need to throw Odium to the wolves now, not give him time to prepare. This is the moment. And also, Roshar's screwed. We can't beat Odium by ourselves. I'm going to make it everyone else's problem.
Yep.
And I'm also going to give him this extra power.
It's the Sunmaker's Gambit.
Yep. Well set up. Yep. Fine. It's all technically there. And I understood, like, pretty early on, like, I get where this is going.
Yeah.
The right move, but...
I'll throw on emotionally why this can't go. So 2.5, I am disappointed. Emotionally didn't hit. Why I can't go lower than that is a couple reasons. I'll go good, then we'll end bad. Sandwich it.
Got it.
We'll sandwich it with a bad sandwich. So the middle will be good. Why I can't go lower is the wits realizing what Dalinar did and the sacrifice Dalinar make that people don't realize that Dalinar did in the end make a genius play. Like, he made the right call, and that people don't realize Dalinar's metagaming. They don't understand that Dalinar didn't lose. he purposefully did that and gave up honor. And the fact that Wit realizes that, and Wit, who we see throughout all these books, is this Cosmere level ethereal being and is going, holy shit, Dalinar. And just, that's a very satisfying. So if I was built up throughout the whole journey, I would have just been fucking yeah. But it was just a satisfying thought to go, wow, Wit knows Dalinar did the right thing and the other characters don't know quite yet. And it's that, I love a bittersweet ending, and it was the right bittersweet note to end on. Just I don't, again, the substance of getting to there, but it's the right, Sanderson is, I think, had that ending in mind, or this ending in mind for 20 years, he said, for so long. And I believe.
Yes and no. It seems that he tried like 3 different endings with beta readers, and the one that was released is like a combination of all 3, but he didn't go with any of them.
No, but that was for a specific character's plot line.
Got it.
It wasn't for like the end of the series. It was like he didn't say the character, I don't think, in that clip you're talking about. It was, so it could have been Shallan's, it could have been
Gotcha.
It could have been Renarin's, but I thought Dalinar part, I believe, was set up for a long time. But again, I'm like, oh, that feels good. So when I finished Wind and Truth and I look back, I'm going, all right, I like how Dalinar ended. A lot of the characters didn't feel the same, and I'm complaining about all that, but I'll say, like that a lot, that ending.
Except for the Blackthorn basically being back. No.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
That I hated. Dalinar sacrificing himself, and then Odium going like, "Oh, you messed up, Dalinar. You actually put too much of yourself into the cognitive. And I'm going to take the Blackthorn version of you and make it like."
That is going to be a big world complaint of a lot of the soft magic of the cognitive. Is it not cognitive realm? Is it cognitive realm? No, that's the.
I think I'm wrong on that.
Spiritual realm.
Yeah,
but
I feel like we're getting it wrong both times. But
so I want to say one other thing too, because then we could sandwich it with the bad, of course. My favorite scene in the book. Maybe I'm alone here. I'm like, when I mentioned this to the patrons book club, they're like, "That's your favorite." She was my favorite character in the book, Yasna. Reason being,
correct. My favorite.
This is why we have a pod together. Yeah, Ricarda, let's go. so why my favorite scene in the book was that several chapters with Yasna versus Odium. And the reason I was emotionally pulled is, one, the conflict between the two of them.
There was actually conflict between characters of different beliefs and actually, butting heads of ideas.
It was fantastic.
Wonderful.
It was great.
Who would have thought that writing about conflict and characters disagreeing.
Lisa Nagaid.
God.
So
God.
that, yes. So why I loved Yasna, and maybe you could join me on this love.
Oh yeah, no, we're hair's getting. By the way, this dress is goddamn cold.
Stunning. No,
I have never felt more fat in my life. Oh my God, all the sympathy. Also, I wore this wrong. I don't know how to wear this.
It's wonderful. You got a tank top under it. It's
Oh yeah, no, you gotta can't show off too much. I was put it on without it. Went. Oof, that's a little too revealing for YouTube's. Gotta keep that one.
Community guidelines very strict on here. We don't want to turn into a Sanderson novel talking about sex the whole time. We gotta keep this covered up. Okay.
Yeah, this was not sufficient for the nip coverage. Something else goes with this dress. There's an under part to it that I don't have.
Self-aware moment of I know people we met at Dragonsteel, people on the Dragonsteel team watch this stuff. Still, hi. Also, want to say genuinely, I'll ask you this toward the end. I'll say this for the end, but this will be the question. Think about it. Of Sanderson writing this book, how much do you give up on him versus you're excited for future things versus I'll save it for the end of overall thoughts.
We'll save it for the end. But spoiler is I'm not writing off Sanderson. No, it's just I've read so much Sanderson this past year. I need a break. Yes. I need a pause. I just need a whole year. I'm not reading any more Sanderson books in 2025.
That's fair.
I'm waiting.
That's fair.
It's fine.
This is just my message for
2026. We'll get there.
This is just message for Dragonsteel team, all that who are because I guess the passion coming out of here of your hate, my big disappointment, is because this was my favorite thing. Yeah, I know. And so that's where it's coming from.
We went to Dragonsteel because. I
love Sanderson. Even despite this book too, the books let's bring up one of my favorite books all time, Way Kings, Word of Radiance. I love Warbreaker. Basically everything I've read from Emperor Soul, all this stuff, and also Sanderson as the man. Nothing detracts from all that. So that's why it just hurts in my heart to go, I'm only saying mostly bad things about my boy, my man. Yeah. Okay, going back to bad. Yeah. Oh no, we were talking Yasna.
We were talking Yasna. Okay, let's continue on with the positives.
Yasna was a great scene against Odium is you see her always winning up to this point and thinking she is the smartest. She is and researching and
everyone in this entire on Roshar basis like, oh yeah, Yasna's the shit.
She was the first Radiant, wasn't she?
She's the first Radiant one. And she like everyone's singing her praises. And ultimately through most of the series, like what did she actually do? She fell behind, like, yeah, she was the first Radiant, but who actually kicked things off as for the Radiants? It's Kaladin. Kaladin did. Kaladin's actually the hero. He actually stood up and fought. He actually really kickstarted the Knights Radiant.
And the one moment Yasna has to do something, save Thalen City.
Yep.
And she comes prepared. Why it's great to her character, too, is this entire time she's built up thinking about the philosophy of things and trying to defend her point. And she goes in there with all this research. That's her character. And she just overlooks the fact that of her own hypocrisies.
Yeah.
And looking at she is actually selfish. And so, the whole point about the greater good isn't necessarily the most thought-provoking thing you've ever heard of, but the way Odium uses that against her character flaws is compelling. I'm like, oh, I like that. I like that Yasna actually fails. And it also makes complete sense that Thalen City would go over to Odium. It also filled in for me the whole plot theme of how Odium was able to take over all these areas. I'm going like, why? He's the villain. Why would you do this? And then that gives me some good moments.
I'll have a nugget to complain about that specifically.
Of course.
After that, but I completely agree with you. I really liked Yasna getting, knocked off her high horse a little bit, because how many books do we have before this of her, critiquing Dalinar, like, oh, I want to get rid of the monarch system. We're going to go to a democracy. She failed.
Tutorramble.com for Teeter My Totter merch.
Democracy is cringe.
Teeter My Totter.
Yasna is cringe in this book. The fact that she actually failed and is going to have to grow,
I don't think we can say cringe when we're dressed up and doing.
We are cringe.
Yeah.
We are very cringe.
Self-aware cringe.
Yes.
There's a difference. Shallan needs to be, Shallan, what were you saying? What was your point about Shallan being cringe? You were saying Shallan was cringe?
No. Yasna.
Oh, okay. I thought I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
I'm literally looking at you thinking Shallan. Sorry.
I got the perfect hair.
You did it so well.
Isn't the hair perfect?
It's perfect. You did it so well. My subconscious kept thinking Shallan.
Thank you, my coworker Mia, for helping me get the wig. She helped me with
stunning.
That. Yeah. We went out dress shopping together.
Okay. So
yeah.
For that dress?
Yes.
That's stunning. There you go. But so you're saying Yasna was cringe?
In that she supported democracy, but ultimately was like, yeah, any, monarch or, my own people that is kind of get out of line for me, I'm going to assassinate them. And willing to go through assassination attempts. And she basically bullies her way into like, okay, then what's the point of democracy? You're just ruling from the shadows instead.
You love that. It's a false democracy.
I know, but she said she's calling it democracy. And then she's calling out Dalinar like, oh, you want to be a monarch? That's so archaic. It's like, what are you?
Exactly. So she thinks that's what's so great about the moment.
That's the wonderful thing. I hate the ruse of that's exactly the kind of stuff I hate. Is like people saying like, oh, democracy, but ultimately it's just a tyrannical oligarchy, or it's just a, hidden behind the scenes. There's at least some nobility in the fact that like, oh, that's the guy in charge. And all fault, responsibility, blame is at his feet. At least Dalinar's like taking responsibility for his decisions. He's responsible. And he has some things to learn, but Yasna like the hypocrisy of like, oh, it's too much power in one person's hands, but ultimately going like, yeah, I'll just assassinate anyone that gets in my way. Yeah. So
that's why it worked for me so well too.
Yeah.
And it pointed that out.
So that callback to the very first book of her being very utilitarian, and the ends always justify the means, which ultimately means she can do no wrong as long as she thinks it's for the good. Yeah. As long as she thinks it's for the greater good, she's willing to do anything.
I also love how Odium tried to put her in a trap of, oh, if you have more information, then you would know more about what is the greater good, because he's the god who has more information than Yasna. So he's trying to play into her own philosophy. So that whole scene, I think, was Sanderson at his best in this book.
Yeah.
That stuff was, I really, really enjoyed that. I was genuinely reading that going like, oh, yeah, where's this going back and forth? So I had that excitement. I was like, wow.
Here's a nugget, and it's going to be repeated, that this is, I think, a genuine flaw of like, Sanderson needed to go further. The fact that it's revealed after all of that, that Odium had everything in place to actually just take Thaylen City on its own. That if Yesna did succeed and they refused to negotiate with Odium, he would have won anyway because of all the assassins in place. So ultimately, the queen made the right decision to negotiate with Odium. That was the right decision for her because she would have lost everything anyway. Takes away from Yesna's failure. Because ultimately, then it's not her failure. Like, Odium would have won anyway. I think it would have been a lot better of a moment for her and for the story for it to be revealed, like, no, that was Odium's play. Like, hey, if it wasn't for you, Yesna, the allies would still have Thaylen City. But with it being revealed of like, actually, no, it's not really her fault, they would have lost anyway. So it's a lose-lose scenario. I don't like that aspect of it. But everything before was great.
Yeah. So pointing out that scene, that was also one of your favorites?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say to that, adding that in the end, that Odium's plan, I didn't love that, but it didn't take away from me because I loved the scene so much. And also it was because it was more about Yesna's failure. Like, take it away for a plot aspect and for just...
to me, it's a character thing.
More for that than it is for like emotional investment. Because at that point, there was other things I was complaining more about.
Now, I want to tie in something that ties directly into this exact point. So, also additionally, one of my favorite scenes is one of the interludes with Odium and him. Odium and Cultivation arguing like basically their final confrontation, and Cultivation holding his old city hostage, and because set up plot wise, he owns it. This is Taravangian City. He can do what he wants with it. He's not restricted by any of the rules because Odium's power gave it to him. It's fully his. And he destroys it. He destroys the city and everyone in it to just show like, no, Cultivation, like, you cannot blackmail me. And he's willing to stick to his convictions of like, the ends justify the means. Great villain moment.
But at the end, what happens with Carbrinth?
Carbrinth?
Yeah. Isn't it?
He saved every single person and pulled them into the spiritual
isn't that kind of taken away?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were liking it for a second there. I was
liked
very
that
confused.
moment, and then at the very end, it's revealed
saved them.
He saved them all. And it's another one of those things of
that more so, yeah.
It's the same thing of Yesna, ultimate failure. Oh, wow. It is her fault. And like that's compelling. And then it's actually not really her fault. She would have lost anyway, whether she argued well or not.
Can I say, I'm not spoiling anything, but Last Argument of Kings?
Different book.
But some of my feelings to different
book, different message. This, it's supposed to feel that weightiness, and you've taken away.
I get it.
In Last Argument of Kings, you are supposed to feel that kind of hopeless. Like, that's what the point is. I feel like this takes away from the point.
Yeah, it's showing you how two different books handle that differently. But can I say another good thing?
Yeah.
Okay. The wide epic scope. I still feel at Stormlight, although I have complaints about how modern it feels. I'm already starting with complaints. It felt the epic scope and Roshar and what Sanderson's accomplished is something to be commended. It's something like, wow, that is, there's not another book that I can easily read that just feels like I read of modern epic fantasies. Like, what else is there to get that feeling I got from this? And so just for that sake, I was going, no one else is doing it like him. So 2.5 disappointing. Because to go back into complaint stuff, because we're talking emotional impact a lot. So did you want to bring up another specific scene for you before we moved on to thought provoking?
I'm trying to go through. It's easier for me to break it down in character moments, but like going down the list of characters and what emotional scene should have hit, didn't hit. So we talked about Yasna. I think it was doing great for me, and then the nugget at the end that kind of took a little bit away. I agree with you. Mostly positive with Yasna. It's more of a little bit of a complaint of him taking back a bit of her failure of it being. So that's a nugget of a complaint over ultimately positive.
Yeah.
I guess we talked a little bit about Dalinar. I wanted more Navani. Wish had more of that.
We're gonna dive into each character. Want to save it for characters? Because
I guess
I'm thinking more emotional moment of like the feeling he's trying to go for.
Another exciting moment.
Yep.
Adeline, his ending scene of, unoathed, the unoathed arm up. Cool scene, all that stuff. Like, fun fight. I liked that, I guess. I should have been more hyped, but by the end of the book, I was tired and cranky, so I should have been more excited.
Speaking of oaths,
yeah,
what did you give thought-provokingness out of 5 stars? What was that a good transition for you? Did you want to talk? Okay, okay.
Good enough. We've talked enough about it. We can move on.
Thought-provokingness out of 5 stars.
I gave it 2.00 out of 5. Flawed. I think it's flawed.
This might be the one category where I'm lower. 1.5 stars.
Bad.
This is the category.
Hey, you can convince me. I'm willing to go lower. Sure.
No, he's already dead. He's already dead. Don't do it.
I must be wrong.
No. My point is
me.
I think that because I see you start scribbling and changing it. Okay, when we're talking about themes and messages of a story, 2 things when we encapsulate this. One, how is the theme and the message being presented? So what's the nuance? What's the subtlety? How is it presented? Then 2, what is the actual message itself? Is it a good or bad message? Even something that's a message I disagree with, there's plenty of films like this, but they do it in such a compelling way that makes me understand the other side. Phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
This is the case where it does both things bad. It both the nuance and subtlety, the way the message is delivered, and then the actual message that is told undermines and doesn't answer his own question. It is the more I have thought about this, the more I'm going, Sandra, is this really you don't answer your question. Yeah. So first off, let's go nuance, then we'll go to the message itself.
Got it.
You agree with me? First off, the subtlety, the nuance. We talked a bit about that.
Yep.
What do you have to say on that before I ramble at you?
We've talked about it several times already. The fact that all of the emotion. So, in terms of mental health issues that are brought up, which is a huge theme of Stormlight Archive, someone said probably the biggest, that every character has a significant mental illness that they have to get over, whether it be addiction, PTSD, split personality, however you want to put that, and depression. You have a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Not even just mental, but also just physical disabilities and how that affects you mentally.
Mm-hmm. Dawnshard, great message about physical disabilities.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I really like how that's handled.
Yeah.
But so that should be here. It's a very prominent theme. I expect that here, and it should be well pronounced. Mm-hmm. How it's handled consistently across the board is, I think, just objectively terrible. Specifically on how every single character is so self-aware of their problems, except for Yasna. Yasna actually thinks she's right and is suddenly shocked of
that's
confronted.
That's why she's so great. That's why she works.
That actually is great. But
every other character,
everyone else knows exactly their mental problem and how to properly. I know this is wrong to think, but I can't control it, and so I need to.
There's this. I want to find the YouTuber. They described this perfectly when I was looking up some people's thoughts. They described this perfectly. They said the characters felt like an Instagram feed. That you were looking at people saying,
I saw that same thing.
Oh yeah, it was some clip, something out there, but was saying it's like an Instagram feed of love yourself, do this. Yes, those are things. Yeah, sure,
but
you don't want to see a whole book of love yourself, you go queen, da da da.
Yeah, that's boring.
So that's the presentation of it. Sorry to interrupt.
No, completely agree. The nuanced take of that is, so I think the easiest one for me to rag on is Renarin. Specifically, and Renarin introduced in this book, it's hinted at that he's gay and also on the spectrum to some degree. It's not really explicitly said, but pretty clear in this book. Both of those things are true, one more than the other. But the moment he finds out that he is at least cognizant of I am attracted to Relaine, which already the interspecies thing, weird, but okay, let's
with it.
Let's run with it. As how the singer's described, okay, hard feet.
They're very different, yeah.
But also, furries exist today, and I find that weird of how can you find a not human attractive?
It looks like
whatever. People are attracted to cars too. So
even talking about this too. So it's the Renarin and Relaine. Renarin and Relaine, like I'm kind of thinking of it as maybe it's not even because it's not a sexual, or I don't know if it's sexual or not. It's more so the
seems like it kind of is. Like
my
they
question,
find him physically. They find each other physically attractive.
Yeah, that's not what I mean. I mean for the is it the case that you can have a like can you have intercourse as a? I didn't know if that was said in the book, but are there basically mixed like singer plus human children? I didn't pick up on that. If you did.
Doesn't exist.
I was trying to think of like, is it real world, like it's literally two different species, or if it's more different hominids or hominoids like Neanderthal and Homo sapiens. Anyways,
that's a world that honestly it's so removed from the actual point that I want to make.
Yeah.
Of the minute that Renarin's talking to himself in his own head about like he acknowledges these feelings, but has his concerns over like does R'Lane actually see men that way as well? Like the anxiety of that. Like, okay, well, at least maybe there's going to be some friction, some tension.
Give me
conflict. Immediately that there's going to be a moment of anxiety, tension. Will they, won't they? Bridge 4 member comes up like, I see how you're looking at R'Lane. Don't worry, we chatted over Stu and everything, and he's also awkward. I'm pretty sure it's gonna work out for you. He also likes men.
At no point did you think the will they, won't they. It was just like,
stop! No, don't say. Just take that out completely. Don't. Why leave? Why put that in there? Why? Why let us have tension and actual anxiety over? Why wouldn't you let Renarin actually be nervous about this and? God damn it! Why?
Also, I gotta say, like they were nervous. It was said. I think R'Lane said like the. Do you remember this part that was said in the book too? R'Lane said something to the effect of, "Hey, I don't know if people are going to be quite accepting of this," and like the nerves of what's going to happen in a society like Roshar. To me, of course, Shallan was supportive and everything, but to me, I was thinking
everyone is.
To me,
everyone's so supportive in the exact same way. Everyone sounded like a goddamn robot.
Well, that's to me the modernity of this made it feel like it was L.A.
Yeah,
in a way. All I'm saying with the relationship, this Roshar, this world of even where their tension was going, will this be accepted or whatnot, and like that, even that conflict or tension that was said between them. Also, I was more so
wasn't it already well set up that homosexuality is relatively accepted in Roshar already?
In Oathbringer, there was a scene of like
one of the. This is Singer and Human. That's the different part.
Yeah, that's the additional part. But the like Oathbringer was brought up between one of the bridge members or bridge crews. I forget which character. But this one, it is more so. I didn't. Also, you saw in the past the history that Singer and Human relationship and so forth. But I guess from Shallan's reaction, the rest that also wasn't conflict for me of like the will they, won't they, and then. And anyways, agreed with you as well. The conflict, the tension wasn't there at all. From the beginning, you're going like, oh, this seems like it's going to work.
Yeah.
And at the end, it did work.
Yeah. But continue on from it. Because like maybe that's part of character's
what point was that with thought-provoking? What was more so
we're talking about the themes of mental so I was mainly talking about how everyone is so self-aware of all their mental neuroses.
Got it.
And for R'Lane, him getting like his sexual attraction and the anxiety that he deals with, physical attachment and all that, and the fact that he knows exactly how to think. He knows, I'm thinking this wrong and that's my anxiety in the way, but I'll get over it. Right. And everyone being just so supportive and everyone understanding the exact right thing to say. Dull as hell. Why have this?
Like an Instagram feed.
Like an Instagram feed. But you can carry that through every single character. Shallan being, now, maybe Shallan's probably one of the better ones. I had some of the most excitement with her, especially in the beginning, of her seeming to come into her own. Of like, our girl is here. She seemed like her confronting the Ghostbloods.
That was a nice display.
Yeah.
You have been gifted.
You've been
you're
given
welcome.
a gift. But her confronting the Ghostbloods and about to cower in fear, going like, okay, I need to wait for supports, and then realizing, no, they're actually terrified of me. I got my shard armor. Like, I'm the Radiant here. Everyone's terrified of me. And then loved that moment of her coming into her own of like, yeah, go Shallan.
Yeah.
But then everything past that, maybe it's less bad where she seems to have gotten over her neuroses, but she understands. Again, it's how it's presented of, I know that this is a coping mechanism and blah, 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 blah. I was bored. I was bored with how she discusses her own mental illness. I think the presentation was devoid of conflict.
I won't disagree with you. Actually, Shallan's didn't stick out to me as much for some reason. Because do you have anything else you wanted to add to Shallan's or any other specific? What do you think the overall theme and message of the book was, I guess? When you're encapsulating it and it's all going to this grand, here's Sanderson's message. What would you say?
Ultimately, I think one of the bigger messages with this is the difference between like Adeline. A lot of this is an oath versus responsibility. Like an honor is...
He says oath versus a promise.
Oath versus a promise,
yeah.
which I think is maybe poor wording for a really complex idea, which is basically like the intentions matter. Like, what is the oath for?
Want me to quote Dalinar?
Go ahead.
This encapsulates it. So Dalinar says, keeping an oath is not an ultimate good, Taravangian. It is only as good as the ideals it is sworn to. Uniting is not an ultimate good. It is only as good as the purposes for that unification.
Yeah. And
likewise, in Zeth's point of view, how the law, and now we see as well, but Zeth just wants to follow something, and to him, Kaladin's, here's part of it too, how uninteresting that whole philosophical debate was. And it's even pointed out by Kaladin at a certain point. Like, of course, he's now illogical, but how much was drawn to that point of you don't just follow something because it's there. There's a morality beyond that.
Yeah.
And the deeply unsatisfying answer that Sanderson gives, and when Dalinar says it's about the ideals above the oath, and when Zeth says, I am the law, it's not just, I won't just follow it for following's sake. He still leaves us in the same spot, because the answer to then where do you get that ideal from? Because Zeth's internal turmoil is, I need to follow something, I will follow this. Okay, I am the law. I make my ideals. The problem is he ends up in a place where he's not saying the law, it comes from an objective moral God. And he's also, he's more so just saying, you make your own. If it feels right,
good,
you do it. Now, where that works is where the oath, again, Dalinar's reasoning for it's the ideal beyond it. Whose ideal? Sanderson's answer to this question, it's the ideal that feels right to Sanderson. So if it's an emotional thing and it feels right, because we all have that human thing, like, go with your gut, that's the feeling to go with. But the problem is this book masquerades in a way, this hope and optimism of this ideal, but then leaves you with Nietzsche's answer of, if we are void of this, if this oath isn't just an objective moral oath, or that's not something you take that away, then we will follow an ideal, and we will find
whatever feels good is right.
And his whole, what was so satisfying about these books so far with Kaladin's oath and building up, and of course the ideal Sanderson's going for here is a good thing. Like, obviously overcoming depression, these things, and why it hits is that this character Kaladin he wants to commit suicide. He feels dejected, but something pulls him away, and he believes in something else. This oath that he does come to find is
frequently, it's all of the oaths previously is all about that
the characters need them.
The characters are flawed, and they need something beyond themselves because they themselves are flawed. Kaladin has to acknowledge, like, I will, despite my feelings, I will do the right thing in many different facets.
Yeah.
Same thing with Shallan. Shallan, she wants to cower in her lies. She wants to, distance herself from herself, basically, and cope. And she also needs to confront the truth, confront who she is, and accept who she is to move forward. All of these oaths is about human beings being very flawed and having to overcome their own flaws to aspire to something greater.
But again, what is greater?
And then we loop back around to greater is just what we feel is right.
So the such unsatisfied thing is he leaves it as that oath, and he's not trying to answer in book 1, like, where do you get morality from? He's not trying to answer that in book 2, book 3. By book 5 here, he's trying to say a statement about ideals and oaths, and it falls so flat because it says nothing.
Yeah.
It says inherently, that is what's frustrating to me.
And
because
even if that's the answer, it would have come across better if that was more bittersweet, of the characters acknowledging that, like, yeah, this does suck.
There's a message that could be said there.
But it's ultimately just, it's shown as a very positive light, and ultimately being like, it should be more negative than it is.
It's seen as optimistic, but it's seen as hopeful. But really, that's some dark thoughts.
Yeah.
What again, these ideals, why it's, you follow the idea is, I get it. Like, I know he's going for a good message here of
Adelin's probably handled the best of
Yeah.
how he never liked the oaths. He doesn't like the point of that, but he likes keeping a promise to a friend, because a lot of that is what's in tension. He will do his best. Having an oath and just, it takes, it's like the difference between charity and like taxes, basically. You know, like the government can come along and take $5 from you and then buy, you know, someone who needs it a sandwich. Technically, you gave money to help that person. Like, you benefited them. But that takes away the idea of charity. And then you have removed the intention, you removed the soul from it. You've basically you put laws into something that should be more emotional and moral. And that's what an oath tends to be. It's like, oh, well, as long as I stick to the letter of the oath, that's what's good. And Adelin says, no, it's our connections to each other that's important. It's because I care about Maya that I'm going to stick by her, and it's why I'm going to keep my promise to my friends, is because of our connection together. It's not that I'm going to keep that promise because I made a promise. That's not the point. I understand that.
The quote exactly is, an oath could be broken, but a promise stood as long as you were still trying. A promise understood that sometimes your best wasn't enough. Promise cried with you when all went to damnation. A promise came to help you when you could barely stand, because a promise knew that sometimes being there was all you could offer. It's one of the lines.
Yeah.
And that's the issue too with Sanderson, and usually he has these really heartwarming messages. And again, this probably connected for a bunch of people. I know people that love the theme and messaging of this, but it comes back to, he doesn't answer his own question. Yes, I get it. He's going for the greater ideal, but then, the oath, let's look at this, talking about oath and following that oath. Of course, when Kaladin is making an oath and going, okay, I will protect those, even the ones that I hate. The reason he makes that oath is because he does believe it. He goes, okay, you know what? You earn the oath. You earn, you know what? I made the character journey.
But also he will
now commit to that oath.
He also knows that in the moments that he hates someone, he wants to harm them. He doesn't want to help them. That's the human emotion, and acknowledging that actually, you know, just because I feel it doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
And so he has to, like, I will believe in my oath. And when I'm weak,
exactly.
when I'm emotionally weak, I have that oath to stand behind, because I've learned that lesson. I've earned it. And so in those weak moments of his, he can lean on it.
Exactly. To me, some of these oaths are greater ideals that you should strive for. It's like, even though you think you should kill yourself, you shouldn't, because when you are struggling, look, this is why you should commit to this oath. So Sanderson's making statements about this is a good thing. But then this book goes and takes a crap on all those oaths. He's not saying that then Kaladin's journey wasn't worth it. I get that. But then it's just taking his whole thing that makes Stormlight so badass. Oaths! Knights Radiance! Follow your oath! And it's something small. And I know I'm rambling all over the place, but like a vow of marriage, like you're going to commit to something, an oath, a promise. To me, I'll even say that kind of fell flat for me, the promise versus oath. Again, I get the meta concept of it, but an oath, in a way, the words can somewhat be interchangeable. Depends on who you're talking to, what they understand about the word. Because an oath, a promise, a vow, these are in the same vein. And it's going like, okay, the personal responsibility to that oath should be the same way you treat a promise.
A promise can be broken.
And an oath can be broken. You're just interchanging the word.
And they basically mean the same thing.
Exactly. So Adelin's whole thing there is like, Kaladin, don't take the oath if you don't truly believe it. Don't make a promise if you don't truly believe it.
It also is more, Adelin wants the good part of the oaths in the sense of like, this isn't all these good intentions, but I want the back door. I want to be able to break it if circumstances change. That's kind of like basically what I want. I want I don't want
in the water.
I don't want the negative consequences of breaking it. That's what's so harsh is like the fact that Spren sort of kind of die if you break an oath. That there are real consequences, dire consequences of breaking an oath. And I was like, yeah, But what if there weren't consequences to it because circumstances change?
Hate
it's
it
like,
even more now. Ugh.
Okay.
Yeah. I just can't see it beyond that if Sanderson doesn't actually say anything.
Yeah.
That's why genuinely a 1.5 star is bad. It's like barely above Name of the Wind's message. I am very frustrated
everyone
with
just
the
be
answer.
like positive, man. Just accept
both
people
sides.
for who you are. And the fact that
delivery.
it's all of a sudden everyone's just hunky-dory with everything. As long as you're happy, man, just feel good. And it's like, fucking dull. This is epic fantasy,
it's the
and
delivery
everyone
and then
is
the
just
answer. Unsatisfying. And why I don't give it completely one is like the Yezna and the greater good talk. Like the things that was a nice, thought-provoking, like looking again at the character's own flaw and what they needed to. Anyways,
I think Adeline was somewhat pretty good of him with his friendship with the king,
Yanagon,
and how he was, conflict with the like Yanagon's retainers and all this. Like, good. Hey, like he needs a friend, and I liked all that stuff. And there was conflict there of them disagreeing, and again, conflict. I liked it when there was personal conflict. But even the singers, the great enemy, and I'm just kind of going like both sides are kind of like.
Honest, Rich, it's gotten to the message of this book has gotten to the point where the first thing I would say to Sanderson if we ever interviewed him was like, you're my biggest inspiration. Like you're the reason I used you for writing advice, why we started a BookTube channel, like all these. That'll be first. The second thing will be like, what were you going for? Like, what's your answer? Do you realize that I know you're a person of faith, but the answer you're giving here is very, it's very secular. It's a very secular message, but it gives me both. But that's not a good or bad thing. It's just the way that it's seen as something that like freeing in all this, but genuinely leading to hedonism. It is. Again, his message is the ideal is good so long as the character realizes, like Sanderson agrees with that ideal. Because then when you get to morally gray issues, he doesn't answer those morally gray issues. The the obvious ones, like, hey, should you abuse puppies or not abuse puppies? There's just a gut reaction, like, we know deep down, why is that? Then we can talk about that. Why do we think that's right or wrong? But there's the gut, 99.9% of humans, less psychopaths, will go, don't abuse puppies. So when it's talking about things like that and depression and so forth, that's a fine answer because, of course we'll all agree with that. But then take that same premise to anything with a little bit of moral ambiguity to it, and it leaves you with nothing to answer. Because how boring was the stuff with Nail and Kaladin? That's why it's so boring, because it's like, don't follow Nail, just Nail because it's... To me, a lot of this was Sanderson is using the genre of fantasy to get away with bad storytelling and writing. Yeah. The fact that Nail is... like he's just obsessively following the law, even like it's incredibly illogical. He can go on like men are flawed and they basically do what they want and all these things. Like that's why you have to follow a higher thing, the law. And Colin's like, but people make the law. Like, what do you mean? It's like what you're in circles here. What the hell are you talking about? Why are you obsessing over this when your whole thing is men are so flawed? It's like, well, men made the law too. Why are you saying that that's divine in nature? So dull. It's magic. He's magically insane. And it's the insanity from the heralds and he's just like suddenly broken. And then all of a sudden, like Kaladin, it's not your fault. No, stop, Kaladin. Nail, it's not your fault. Only Robin Williams can say that. God damn you. And then hundreds of years, thousands of insanity. Oh, I've been so wrong. I've magically been broken out of my insanity. In 10 days. I'm so pissed. All right. I'm flipping my hair. I'm that pissed. Sorry we beat that. Where's your rating? Did you lower it by 0.25? Yeah, why not? Yeah, there we go. Let's get that one in the one. Why not? That's the one. That's my lowest rating for the book. Next will be Prose. Very flawed. You went lower than me. Oh, no, you went 1.75. Okay. 1.75. Very flawed. Not all the way to bad. Characters. Yeah. What would you give? Oh, and we'll go beyond. I won't keep hammering that through. Okay, characters. What'd you give that out of 5 stars? 2.25. Very disappointing. I gave it a 2.75 below average. A lot of that score of my 2.25, why it's only very disappointing and not lower, is I'm leaning off the back of the previous books. lot of that too. Yeah.
I do feel nearly every character is a shell of what they were, but it's still the shell of an awesome character that I love. And so it's at least something there.
Oh, that's so sad to hear. Because I do agree
and that's
with your
why
sentiment.
the word disappointing is the right word. Because
for those that don't know, do you want to explain? Like, we have words for our ratings.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have specific words that we tie to our numbered scale, and that best explains what we feel about it.
Yes.
So rather than just kind number, of ambiguity and just the number aspect of it.
We always say the word after. So like you said 2.25 means very disappointing.
Very disappointing.
2.75 is below average for our...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going through all of the characters, the only character that I think was... The bones were there, and I liked a lot of the stuff where it could have been. There's potential. Was Adeline. And I think Shalon was roughly there. I liked them most of all, but everyone else felt like a hollow shell of who they were.
I have something
I was
liked.
Ultimately disappointed with all of them.
Because I'm going to agree with you. We talked about our Cal, Dell, our Shalon. I'm going to agree with our big dogs. A lot of what kept me from going lower, and we're still in the 2 range, so we're close.
Yeah.
A lot what kept me to go lower was Yasna already sung her praises.
Yep.
I loved her character. So, just the fact she ended satisfyingly. She was the Sansa of this for me. Now, I won't spoil anything, but Game of Thrones Season 8 was atrocious. Now, this is no Game of Thrones Season 8. Maybe it is for you, actually. Close for you?
Close.
Damn. But Game of Thrones Season 8, the one character I still loved was Sansa. She was logical. But anyways, with Yasna, loved her. But also, I would say Wit still gave me the wit vibes and fun, and was still the wit presence I enjoyed. And I will add on, Odium Taravangian was much more interesting than Ray's past Odium. And I got to say, as far as villains go for Stormlight, Moash was very lackluster, in this book especially.
Yeah.
So we'll talk Moash.
God, what a forgettable character. I completely forgot Moash was in this book until you just mentioned
Sanderson
it.
Forgot about him.
And he had a whole interlude to make him like cool, like a Inquisitor, and then get ready for book 6. He's gonna be something in book 6. I don't care.
But my point being, of the villains, it would probably go Sadeas, and then right behind him would be Odium Taravangian for me. Like, cool presence. Hey, I love Thanos in Avengers Infinity War, and that he's a great villain. Awesome. I think Odium Taravangian was way better than Ray's, more interesting internal conflict. Outsmarted our character, showed enough to actually this gravitas. So with Odium, with Wit, with Yasna, I had to go like all good stuff. Then the rest, disappointed, awful, disappointed. So that's where I'm a little bit more balanced on this.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on it. And with Kaladin, so I want to jump to Kaladin then.
Do it. Yep.
Kaladin's, and again, the destination of Kaladin. I like the destination of where Kaladin is. But the journey to get there was real dull. And it technically made sense. And I look at all of it and go like, do I want Kaladin to be happy? Yes. Do I want Kaladin to be able to choose, like, he doesn't want to fight, he wants to help people with similar mental illness to him, and all these things, like, yes. But it gives me just an overall feeling of like, good for you, Cal, but I kind of want you to go off into the sunset now. Like, okay, your story is over.
Also, doesn't he answer his 5th ideal from page 1? His 5th ideal is, I will protect myself so that I may continue to protect others. From page 1, he's like happy and feeling good. Like, yeah, take care of yourself, Cal. It's not at any point did that oath... I guess I didn't feel the struggle of that oath to get there.
Yeah, it's a pretty lackluster 5th ideal.
I think it's a great ideal. Like, it's a thing to follow.
Sure, but it's lackluster for the 5th. It wasn't a struggle.
For Kaladin,
it seems like that was already done.
Imagine Way of Kings Kaladin's going like, I need to live on. Like, I should not,
Yeah, after the chasm, I need to protect myself so I can protect others.
Yeah.
But thing is, I'm going like, good for you, Cal, but also this is not exciting for a book. Like, for my epic fantasy book, I don't particularly want to follow the therapist. Especially if it's done this way. Maybe you could have made maybe there could be a better epic fantasy book with a better therapist character. But they're not interesting. They're not fun to follow. And God, the disappointment of the nail fight. I was talking with Andrew Givler about this, and we were just getting started, and he was expressing his disappointment with Kaladin. I told him, come on, Sanderson knows. This is Kaladin, freaking Stormblessed. We're gonna get an awesome Kaladin fight. Like, that's what I'm expecting. Sanderson knows what he's got to deliver on the awesome Kaladin fight and the epicness of Kaladin Stormblessed. Of course, he's going to deliver that to us. And I think we're finally going to get it. I'm bored out of my mind, going like, okay, that's nice, Kaladin. And then finally, like, oh, Kaladin versus the Herald Nail. All right, something fun, something exciting. And then he puts down the spear and pulls out the flute. And Nail's like, oh no, my entire world is broken apart. Fucking all right, fine, I guess.
That was so well set up, Rich.
I
mean, you're right. That is what happens. It is.
It's what happens.
It is what happens.
And do I like Kaladin playing the flute and dancing with Syl? And I like that rate. Like, that's probably one of the better written scenes in the entire book. And like, I kind of like him setting up with the music, but kind of comes out of nowhere. I know it's been hinted from the very beginning when Wit gives him the flute, but him just all of a sudden this time, like, the wind's talking to him. Okay. All of a sudden.
Which,
neat.
if I have right, is a shard of Analysium, right? Or a part
it's an
of
old
Analysium.
god, something, whatever. But then he takes that from us.
Yeah.
He takes from us the last epic Kaladin Stormblessed fight scene. And I know people saying like, hey, look, he's now a herald. He's going to come back and he's going to be awesome Kaladin, which to me, why do you think that? We could have had that here, but it's clearly now like Kaladin Stormblessed, the therapist of heralds. Why would you expect him to actually carry a spear again? Why would he? He's the therapist. I don't expect him to. Maybe we will, but that doesn't seem where his character's going. I wouldn't expect him to.
Do you think history will look back at book 5 more fondly? If like after the next books are up, because you don't have to wait. Is it the wait and the feeling that this needs to be somewhat of a conclusion?
Maybe, but this whole book felt like a setup. It's a setup book. And Rhythm of War felt like a setup book.
Rhythm of War is definitely a setup book.
It's a setup book. And you know what? I'm okay with a setup book. But then your finale should kind of deliver.
Yeah.
This was not a delivery. It was just more so like, hey, well, you want more Kaladin stuff? Well, maybe next book in 10 years. I'm not going to be interested by then. But yeah, so Kaladin stuff, ultimately, I would have liked all of Kaladin and Szeth stuff to be like a novella. You know, like after the book is done, we get our cool, Kaladin finally going off to the sunset, being a therapist. He's out of the limelight. And we get that as a novella. And that's where he ends his story. Great. I don't need 1,300 pages of it. You want to go on to another character?
Well, I mean,
or do you want
just with Kaladin,
get on to me?
Kaladin being so self-aware.
Yeah.
Not have that. We're kind of reiterating that point about the conflict. So I think we got Cal down of why he didn't work. His flaws, wants, and needs to end his ideal being I will protect myself so I can protect others. Felt like right away he felt that. Whereas I guess he didn't need the journey. Here's my most frustrating part actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, putting Cal and Szeth together makes logical sense with the fact that Tien, child soldier, Szeth, child soldier. Kel is also healing because he's able to have that journey with Szeth that he wasn't able to save Tien. Makes narrative sense. I understand why it's there. And having Kel, again, we won't reiterate ourselves, but why we didn't like it, but then having the peak pairs of characters not be in this book, to me, why did we only get Cal and Adolin? Like really the last time was Oathbringer or Words of Radiance was peak with them. You can make it work, Sanderson. All I mean is that a lot of this is that framing. The framing of the 10 days it hurts that. It does.
So many of the character, the fact that they have to be separate and there isn't time to get these characters back together, that characters are very just isolated and removed from the characters that they should have more conflict with. And then there's also, you would think there'd be more conflict between Kaladin and Szeth. And I find just...
Szeth kind of early on goes like, this guy's got a point. Well,
pretty early, but he's
like
also...
Cal kind of...
But there wasn't any like really hard disagreements. It was more Szeth's annoyed with Kaladin. Kaladin's trying his best. And then like pretty early on, Szeth was like, actually, you're kind of making some sense.
Oh, Nightblood was funny at times.
That's true.
Nightblood
was funny sometimes.
Nightblood at times talked about, I don't know, it was like, hurry up, Szeth. Syl's probably waiting for me. I'm like, Nightblood. No, she's not. just fun to be watching like that. But yes, Cal, Szeth, talked about them. The most disappointing part about the characters is my favorite character in fiction in a certain books now. I can't say in this book, Dalinar Kholin. He is... I don't know how to encapsulate that. Of go, yes, Dalinar Kholin from Oathbringer, Dalinar Kholin from, I can't even say Rhythm of War. He's not really in Rhythm of War. Dalinar Kholin from Way of Kings to Oathbringer, one of my favorite characters of all time. And so I cannot believe that I did not tear up, cry, feel anything when Dalinar died.
Yeah, I felt nothing.
That is my...
And for you, that's rough.
That's my favorite character. And I'm looking at that going, why did I not feel that for Dalinar Kholin?
Also, just how it was written, his death was an afterthought. It normally, like, the huge, big character death, you want to kind of, like, have a bit of gravitas to it. Like, you know, normally you have other characters witness it, and, you know, it's built up something. And it feels like he protected him, and then just, like, a line of, like, and Kaladin died. He was wiped out. And then, moving on.
Well, Dalinar, not Kaladin. Yeah.
Dalinar, sorry, thank you. Yeah. Just Dalinar died. And he was wiped out. And we're moving on. Okay. It felt like an afterthought. That's sad. And also, why was it an afterthought? Because Dalinar's not really dead. Blackthorn's getting... Guess what's going to happen? Odium's going like, Dalinar put too many of his own feelings, thoughts, emotions into this spiritual version of the Blackthorn. The Blackthorn exists in people's minds, so I'm going to actually take him. He'll be my... And it's like, what's going to happen? The Blackthorn's going to learn the same lessons that Dalinar did, and Dalinar eventually is going to, like, return as, you know, Blackthorn. It's like, now the enemy, and then he's, you know, something also happened with Dalinar's soul, like he tried to claim it, but, he was actually claimed by another. So, you know, Blackthorn's going to be an enemy until that and the other Dalinar merge, and Dalinar will be back again. All right. I see it. I see it coming. I know, and I'm bored.
I mean, the coolest things with Dalinar. So in this book, he had his honor, taking honor than getting rid of honor. I love, again, the bittersweet ending of that and Wit's view of Dalinar, knowing that. I did like that a lot. The Dalinar moments, as I think about them, and I think about all of these characters, the big problem is they all peaked and they all had their journeys, and I feel like Sanderson didn't have a lot more to give them.
Yeah.
At least didn't show a lot more for them in this book.
We didn't have enough Dalinar interacting with characters where they, like, fundamentally disagreed or some kind of conflict. Most of the book he's with, you know, Navani, and he's seeing these heralds. And again, all of Dalinar's scenes, it's just exposition dumps for more world building stuff. Like, it's all flashbacks, where I would have preferred we just get more interludes and we get this stuff as just, because that's the thing I genuinely enjoyed. Is the genuine flashbacks of the actual honor and the explanation.
Yes.
All of those.
What's his name?
Tanavast?
Tanavast, yes.
All of the Tanavast flashbacks, I think, were really well done.
I do agree.
They were worded epically. I liked how it was written. Mm-hmm. It ran by quickly. I think it got the point across in way quicker of a time. Where, why can't we just do that with all the Dalinar flashback stuff? And instead, we get Dalinar interacting with alive characters, with maybe have him interact with his son, where there's this big friction between them. That would have been nice. Or more interactions with Odium, and their moral disagreements and some kind of fight instead of just like, and the end.
What do you think about Sigzil's character?
It's fine, I guess. Like, okay. He learned to become a leader. He's going off. Okay. I did not care.
Well, what did you think about, Gaz had a moment.
I guess. What did he do?
Felt guilty for doing the bad.
He felt guilty for being a slaver and nearly killing Kaladin freaking Stormblessed. Yeah, okay.
I'm trying to get through some of the characters that we might not have talked about as much.
Sure.
And I'm trying to get to so Moash, Gavinor. We didn't talk about Gavinor as a character, and my God, I don't know if I emphasize that as much as an emotional impact, but that is so damn disappointing. The fact that again, you know my thoughts on the thought provokingness. So why that's not an interesting philosophical dilemma? How Dalinar supersedes that, and then also on Gavinor's end. A lot of what I didn't like, maybe this is more world building type stuff, but it seemed like in the spiritual realm, just things can happen. I mean, yeah, sure, you could just age him. Okay. I guess he's 20 years older. Okay. That of course. Why not? Let's, okay. And so that's a lot of my reaction is just going, the baby Gavinor that Navani took wasn't really Gavinor. Gavinor was actually over there in this realm that you can really do that. Okay, I really want to say that for world building. I want to keep our ramble somewhat confined.
I also called the Gavinor champion theory.
Do you want to talk plot then?
Knew it. Hold on. Plot. Characters very disappointing. Like I'm trying to
think of anything else to add.
Navani, just not enough.
If we do, it'll come out in plot. As we discussed then. Let's go plot. What'd you give out of 5 stars?
I gave it a 2.5 as disappointing.
I gave 2.25 very disappointing. So
I think most of this plot is, if I could sum up the plot, it would be like technically correct. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's no plot holes particularly. Like Sanderson's good at structuring a plot where it makes sense. Everything is there. I understand why things are moving the way they are.
So you can't say flawed, right?
It's not flawed. It doesn't not make sense. It's just dull. It's a dull setup. That's ultimately uninteresting. And a lot of things that felt like they should have been important were kind of just dropped. And again, 1,300 pages.
So talk about the pacing, talk about the 10 days.
That's the bigger problem. This is a plot. My God, this hair's in my way. God damn.
Give me your thoughts on the pacing at being 1,300 pages.
All you people with actual hair, how do you deal with it? I forgot.
You had hair once.
I had hair once, and I forgot.
That's right. This is such a strange. How does it feel?
Oh, God.
To be one of us.
One of you guys. Oh, God, I hate it.
But, okay, talk about... It's 1,300 pages. Bless you.
What do we get? What do we get from at the very beginning?
Yep.
Humans are a little bit down.
Mm-hmm.
They have a little bit down. You know, humans are down bad.
Yep.
They're not in a great place. And then 1,300 pages, and they lose a little bit. Like basically lose just about everything, but ultimately, like, all right, they're just kind of in a different area. It's not like we lost. Like, even the full kingdom we, like, fully lost. Like, what was the kingdom we, like...
Thalen, because it went
Thalen City. But thing is, they're going to be pretty good. Like, they actually got a good deal out of Odium. They're going to be pretty well protected. And days come, they're probably going to be pretty fine as a people. Like, again, it's set up of, like, rule under Odium is not going to be, like, the worst case scenario under Odium's, like Taravangian Odium's rule is not like, all the humans are going to be wiped out. It's like, no, he's going to make them actually thrive. It's just going to be more thrive so we can go to war against the Cosmere. Thalen is going to be fine. But everything else, the fact that we lost the Shattered Plains, and we kind of didn't. Like, it went to the Singers. Like, okay, cool. But I wasn't that invested in them getting that back.
You mentioned earlier how you thought the duel would be at day 3 or 4, 5, something, and then the real ending would be later. What do you think about this even being in a 10-day structure?
Hated it.
Why?
It's just a poor setup. It makes it very anticlimactic. That you're kind of expecting something to go awry, and it feels stretched. This is 10 days. And the pacing just feels both too fast in the sense of we're speeding along a bunch of character moments and things, and it's 1,300 pages. And then also it's too slow.
When did it feel fast for you?
Fast in the sense of like people's, like all the nail stuff, you know, like nail making a mental
quick
breakthrough.
changes at the end?
Yeah, just
okay.
everything just nail, 10 days, now all of a sudden this.
Like Shalon in Rhythm of War, that was a quick end for her.
Yeah.
Her character arc, yeah.
Yeah, I was just deeply uninterested in the whole 10-day structure.
It's the first book he went off of his 5 parts, interludes between each ever. And we knew this for a while going in, it was going to be 10 days, or I don't know how early in advance we knew. But him doing that, I guess he kept to the prelude being watching Gavilar's assassination. So he kept to that. And this time we got the point of view from Gavilar.
Yeah.
Which we didn't talk about quite yet. I guess for setting up the book like that, did that do anything? Seeing Thydakar, seeing more of the Cosmere implementations into the plot overall, did that do it for you?
Somewhat cool in the beginning for me.
Okay.
Again, that was the first stuff, so I was more invested in the very, very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that Gavilar, like we get to see his perspective, and then ultimately, like how much he wanted to be remembered and all these things, and ultimately kind of forgotten. He's dead, forgotten, will not be remembered really, except by a few close family members, and they normally see the negative. So I guess a good end for Gavilar, but it would be hilarious if book 6 we get another Gavilar death flashback. We start again. Now it's from the maid's point of view.
Imagine from Nightblood's point of view.
Yeah.
Like, well, I wasn't exactly there, but
here's how I see it. Here's how I remember it happening. You weren't there, Nightblood.
Nah, but I feel like so a lot of this, the overarching, what would we call it? The B plot, the A plot. We have to look up, make sure we're right with those terms. But the overarching plot for this is the duel. Then we have all the individual characters. We have Dalinar Navani.
With the contest.
Yes, the contest.
Not a duel.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the contest.
Maybe
of
that's
champions.
why he was specific. Because we have the main being with Cosmere and Odium and Dalinar being involved in that larger contest. And then we have the individual plots with Kaladin, Zeth, and Shinovar, Shallan and the Ghostbloods, which I'm just, what? Why am I in?
Again, kind of devoid of conflict. Shallan against the Ghostbloods feels very empty as a point of conflict.
Yeah.
Because how it's set up with how much Shallan's like going, yeah, I'm going after the Ghostbloods because they're kind of going after me. But ultimately, like, her being like, oh, yeah, I don't want to hurt Mraize. And she's like, we just have to fight out of necessity. And it's just like, there's no deep emotional hatred or kind of like, the Ghostbloods didn't do anything to her particularly, but like they pose a potential threat to her. That's weak sauce in terms of emotional investment. Yeah. Also, plot-wise, Ba-Edo Bishram being set up throughout most of this series of like, this is a big deal. Like, she's a threat to Odium. She's a threat to everyone. She's constantly been talked about like she would end all humans. And so he's like, it's not good. And then ultimately, we break her. She's free. What's going to happen? Find out next time. Nothing. We'll find out next episode. Okay. Great. Like that whole thing ended up with like, they freed her. What happened? Did it matter? Not yet. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Could have been an aside. By the way, we freed Ba-Edo Bishram. Did it matter? Did she destroy anything? No. She saw the power of love.
This is why it felt a lot like setup to you. And why, I guess, how much of a conclusion did you expect going into this? Did you expect satisfying payoff, but like, ooh, leave me nuggets to be excited about? That it just didn't do the right balance.
I expected, and I think deserved, as a reader, an ending on the level of Mistborn Era 1. Real ending.
This was not a Mistborn Era 1 ending.
An ending of some types of, for our characters. Our characters will have an ending. Brandon Sanderson has talked about how, like, this is an ending for our characters, and then going forward, like, there'll be new characters. Like, Era 2 of Stormlight is supposed to be, like, new characters that we don't get really perspectives of. So Yasna is most definitely going to be a main perspective in Era 2.
What do you think about that choice, though, of having these Miss Miranda 1 to 2, you go to a different time period to jump. This, since it's going to be not too far removed from...
I want to point out, I liked Era 2, all of Era 2, every single one of those books, more than this book. Fair. Everyone crapping on Era 2. None of that. I liked it a lot, actually. I had a lot of fun.
Richard liked it, so don't make fun of it in the comments, okay?
No, can't do it. Don't do it. I'm going to be real upsetty spaghetti if I see any negative comments about Era 2 of Mistborn.
We'll sign in the comments below either Syl or Shalon instead of Austin Rich this episode.
Yeah.
-S or -S. They won't even know who.
You don't even know.
They won't even know. But then we had Sigil, the Shattered Plains, Renarin and Relane's plotline, Yasna and Thaylen City. All of these beats.
If we want to talk about a little bit with the Shattered Plains whole plotline.
Yep.
I feel like the conflict was really building over one, him becoming a leader, but Caesar becoming a leader, but also it felt like that was going to be the setup between him and Moash, right? Like that was the real conflict that was supposed to be there.
Seems so.
Do we get an end? Do we get something satisfying? No. What happened to Moash? Still around, still kicking it. They left. I don't know. It's kind of dull, but okay, fine. It's just kind of a wet fart.
Moash was never interesting to me, though. That was the one character that it's not like it was any different than before.
I think the fans definitely hyped up Moash more than
Sanderson wanted him to be that important. Yeah. I was never.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, fuck Moash. The whole, like, how everyone hating on him.
Yeah.
Even when we went to that panel of in defense of Moash, ultimately, like, I understood the point of, from Moash's point of view, like, Moash is not a good guy, but he is understandable. Like, I understand why he killed, Elhokar, right? Elhokar. Makes sense. But ultimately, when he, tries to get Kaladin to kill himself, ultimately, I'm on Team Kaladin. He's clearly not. All right.
End of
Bad
story.
guy. End of story. And going like, oh, we got to justify. No, we don't. No, we don't. I'm on Team Kaladin. He's not. Meaning,
well, after this book, are you Team Kaladin?
Yeah, I still want what's best. I like Kaladin, but also his story is sunsetted. It's done. It's okay. It's over. He gets to be happy. That's what I want. And
I don't know. Maybe he's coming back. Harold Kaladin.
Let's kick the horse. Kick the dead horse. Come on, Kaladin. Back for round 2. It's like, just let him retire. Let him be a therapist already.
How much do you think, as far as how long this book goes in the pacing, Sanderson's pressure that he had, or how different it is from writing Way of Kings to writing the 5th book in this series? He said this was one of his most edited books ever. It's the longest book he's had as well. How much of this didn't get cut because editors are... He had a different editor for this book as well.
Yeah.
So do you think that's the reason it got to be so long? I'm just trying to see, like, you talked a lot about the page length and that being an issue for you.
Yeah, because think of all the other books that we've read that have done just so much more in way less of a page count. This did not have to be 1,300 pages. Very repetitive stuff that you could have cut maybe half this book. A lot of, and here's an ultimately big problem, is a lot of because this felt like a setup book, a lot of new things are introduced in this book, world building wise, lore dumps, like the entire Dalinar stuff is just, here's all the answers to things I've been setting up. And I'm also setting up more stuff about the Cosmere. All the things with the Ghost Bloods, it's just more setup that we didn't need 1,300 pages for this kind of stuff.
How badass would it have been if the first arc, the part 1 of 5 in this is the battle, the duel, the contest of champions. You start off the book like, whoa, we're in the thick of it right now.
Hey, maybe give them 2 parts. Give them 2 arcs out of 5.
I'm just fantasizing now of all the ways that just could have been more exciting because I know how it ended up. I'm just going, man, firstly, with the 10-day structure.
Imagine arc 2.
Yeah.
Kaladin dies and becomes a herald.
Okay.
That's arc 2. Like, he gets his epic battle scene, but ultimately he's shipped off for another time. Like, okay, but we get this entire book condensed. Get rid of the Sazed stuff. You can cut almost all of that.
You mean Seth?
Sazel?
Seth. Oh, Sigzil.
Sigzil.
You were saying Sazed from...
Cut all that stuff. Cut most of the Adeline stuff. But I like that the most out of everything. But
still cut
I would have cut most of it. Give me more of Adeline Dalinar. Cut most of the Dalinar stuff almost completely. He didn't need to go on that emotion, like that journey, really, to get to where he ended up in this book. He didn't need
Sorry, which character again?
Dalinar.
Like Dalinar? Okay.
I don't think Dalinar needed that whole spiritual rum journey to get to the destination he was at. He was already there.
Kaladin was already there. I mean, all these...
So most of the stuff could have been...
That's why the plot felt dragged out, because the characters had their moments, and it's just like giving them things to do in the plot. Like, here's visions. Again, several of the point of views being in these visions and getting the information, then ultimately the Tanavast ones being the most interesting of them.
Yeah.
So even the when we're talking about promise, progress, payoff, which Sanderson, that's what he teaches, to the promise, progress, payoff, we are progressing to this ultimate payoff, which we referenced the duel already, but the progress itself and the journey itself was not worth the destination, because following Sanderson's message, the journey was the issue. And when we're I guess when seeing the 10-day structure here, the end of the days and like getting you that momentum from day to day, it didn't feel like he had a punch or any type of... When I think back to Oathbringer, I can still think of the ends of like part 3, where it was the Kholinar, Elokor dies, book changes. So sad. Just the books end with a gut punch, a midpoint, a moment.
How much of a character with Elokar being a deeply flawed but ultimately hopeful character.
Phenomenal.
The conflict between him and Kaladin, and just
phenomenal.
Wonderful character conflict. Juicy.
It's so good. And then this book, I feel like we see the Elokar moment again through Navani's point of view. A lot of this book is then look at what happened in the past books for more context and lore, so we can build wider Cosmere and set up more things. And here's a payout. Here's an end to Kaladin's character, end to Shallan's, end to Dalinar's, of sorts. It just disappointed in every way.
Yeah.
And again, I'll say, have my that's what I had in my positives, the God perspective, Yesna stuff. I liked this touch. It doesn't mean much to the book, but that the wife of Szeth wrote the Knights of Wind and Truth was a nice touch. And I was like, we didn't
have to spend 500 pages of setup with that.
It's
all we needed.
Subtle. It was
that's why she's there.
Exactly.
Also, great way to tie in, like, okay, Szeth got a happy ending.
Yep.
Neat. I'm happy for him. Good. Good job. And also, like, her explaining that she helped Szeth bury Kaladin's body.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I like that too.
Also, I get that the Stormfather, like, siblings awake now, so other people know things, but Stormfather just didn't say things to Dalinar. Just kind of that not giving information trope.
Yeah.
That was like, okay.
And again, a lot of this is how much of that is him using the magical thing because he's a fragment of honor and he's fundamentally broken and flawed. That's why he basically an idiot. Why he's holding all this stuff back. And
do you think you would have enjoyed the plot more if you didn't think about it so much, because the Shallan and her mom being the herald makes perfect sense.
How much was that just glossed over? Like, it was acknowledge, hey, all you theorists were correct, and moving on.
That's a big moment.
It's a big moment. And it was just, I killed my mom. My mom's a herald.
I started the desolations.
No character to follow that up.
I don't know if that's the right term. I started the next desolation.
The final desolation.
The final desolation. Yeah.
The fact that no character follows that up with Shallan is responsible for the final desolation. No character gets like, it's your fault. Nothing. Just, we understand, Shallan. It's okay.
Oh,
nice. Great. Okay. She's healthy. She's good.
Gavinar theory was right and lame.
Yep. What else were we right about?
I did call
the beginning of the book pretty darn early. Again, a lot of this book was like, it showed its hand pretty quickly. It was the moment when Dalinar actually was talking to Wit and said, like, why aren't the other shards helping? Like, you're telling me that Odium is a threat to all of the shards, and we're being forced to keep him. Like, why are we the only ones trying to stop Odium? We need the other shards helping. How can we get them to help? Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, he's going to break the contract. Like, that's the only way. That's because then you force everyone's hand. Like, add that layered on. Like, I think it was, again, technically correct, but also I saw it coming from 1,300 pages away.
It's same thing with Cal. You know where he's going to end up, and anyways. World building.
Sure.
Because this is a lot of what we didn't touch on before. So world building, what'd you give it out of 5 stars?
I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. This is my highest score. I thought it was good. World building is good.
You say it's so disappointingly. It was good. I gave it a 4 stars. It's great world building.
This is where it's tied into the prose for me. The reason why it's only good and not it should be higher is on our scale. What's so important with world building is immersion. I was taken out of my immersion of this world so many times by how Sanderson was writing this. The writing for all the new, like, we've basically kind of abandoned most of the Rosharian exclusive, like, curse words and lingo. We're now just using modern day humor and words and expletives. All right.
So it's not like there's a time jump, but this happens all within 2 years, 2-3 years, right? Since Way of Kings?
Roughly 2-3 years between Way of Kings and, a day after the last book.
Yeah.
Sudden shift of all the, like, humor and words. Like, okay, this doesn't feel like Roshar anymore. That's the biggest problem. Everyone acted differently. Everyone's just so accepting, and everyone understands everyone else's mental problems to the point of, like, everyone's just so supportive. I'm like, where are the high princes that I remember from Elhokar? Where's the every time there's some type of cultural difference. Yeah. It's just handled in well, certainly different over here, but we should be accepting of other people's cultures. Like, where was this? Where was this so many years ago? In all the other books.
They all united, Rich.
Dull as hell. Just boring. This was a day ago.
Should I go positive or negative first?
This is our highest score. Go positive.
Yeah, positive first is that this is where Sanderson's scope and complexity, and just the fact that I haven't felt the grandness of a novel in a while. You feel grand. There's a lot of terms and things that I just couldn't. I'm not a Rosharian expert, but why to me, Way of Kings through Oathbringer are like 5-star worlds because I feel super immersed. I love the lore and the geography, the flora, the fauna, the shard blades, the shattered plains. That's all been there. Then this book comes and he expands it to more Cosmere level. The gods themselves, it's just a gut feeling of like, oh wow, that if I'm gonna give like another book, like this is how you lose a time war, or maybe that's a bad example, but to me that's like great world building. That's like funky and cool and whatnot. I want to give this on the same pedestal as some other 4 stars of like, hey, that's impressive. You're working with so many moving parts, and just it's a tough task. Of all these things, I think it's the most difficult to execute. And I think I guess a specific world building thing to bring up is the migration, recreants, honors, death, or why Honor actually dies. So through all of these visions, we see these big moments and big reveals. And so we got a bit more of the history, the background of the major events that make up Roshar. I feel like we got a little bit more cool things with, no, we didn't even get that. Never mind.
What were you thinking?
I was trying to think cool things with like Thalen and that, but we really didn't get much of that. It was kind of just, no, never mind. We got that in Oathbringer. That was great.
We did.
But I guess it just comes down to scope. I think it's great. I think it's amazing because of scope. And then where it becomes negative is I have 5 things. So the first thing I have is Sanderson's first law of magic. And this, I can say this because it's literally his law. I couldn't say this for another author, but his first law of magic is an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. That's his first law. In this, it's the most soft magic-y feel I've ever gotten from a Sanderson novel with, again, we mentioned Gavinor being able to come back 20 years later because that's how spiritual realm works. We had Carbranth can be saved because all the peoples because Odium can. He can just do that.
Take them all.
Zeth can skip the 4th ideal. I guess you can just skip ideals. Okay, we can do that now. I guess I guess we can do that. And all of these things adding up to what you can. The expansion of the spiritual realm and all this makes it so that I don't understand the limits so much to where I could,
the wind is also still a god here. Like wind talks now.
So that's
and like it's a remnant of a god. Where was she before?
Exactly.
No wind. It felt like just so shoehorned in of like, I need some way to save the. I still want the Spren around at the end of this book. Throw this in there. Okay.
So I don't understand the limits to the world anymore. And I guess I understand the limits of the spiritual realm does funky things.
How ultimately lame are the surges at this point? Like, okay, at this point, like, what are the Ren Runners? They fly. Do we have anything else from like?
As far as magic system goes,
we got the Wind Runners. They fly around. And then we got the
cool thing about them.
They get to Shalon the rest. They can create illusions.
Well, the cool thing about them was seeing the application and how they got the power and how you not pull like Mistborn, but the lashings and so forth. So seeing how, that's already been done. So we're dealing with that magic system now, and so there wasn't any like new information we got.
All the Zeth fights gives us one here's an example of this lashing that we don't actually get to see, and we just get example, and then like neat. Moving on.
So that's one
thing. It's
thing.
Like a talent show rather than a in-depth complex magic system that's used and felt throughout the rest of the story. Compare that to Mistborn. God, Allomancy is so much better.
Yeah.
Way better. Like, oh God. Yeah, it's frustrating. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that was only the first point about the soft magic and me not understanding the limits. Again, I'm giving like a lot of credit to the scope because the one great thing the amazing thing I have to say is scope. That's where it is. And then there's a lot to talk about. When I talk about Cosmere stuff and Wind and Truth with somebody, having read this book, we can probably have a several hour long conversation of like, just about the book's additions and lore. Second thing that I didn't like about it is we've already discussed the modernity of it. The LA, MCU, like these characters, the prose all adds into this feel of this doesn't feel like the Way of Kings. This doesn't feel like the same Roshar. As we've described, we won't beat that to death. Thirdly, I will have to say the implementation of how we learn these things was in a very info-dumpy form with the visions, of course. So the world building wasn't so much natural. It was here's lore, let's experience, let's look at vision.
And if we're going to get a dump of lore, I would prefer it the way he actually did it in
Tanavast.
Yeah. Tanavast is info dumpy, but it's to the point, and it's actually,
succinct.
I think, succinct, well-written, loved it. I loved it a lot more than a bunch of other stuff. But all of the Dalinar scenes is info dumps. Yep. They're all info dumps, but it's dragged out. That ultimately, I don't think particularly helps Dalinar's character. Dalinar doesn't like learn particularly a brand new lesson. He's basically the same kind of guy. He learns more about the world, but I don't know. It's not enough. It was more for the reader. Those scenes were more for the reader's benefit of info dumping and lore rather than for Dalinar's benefit.
That's a great way to put it. You could argue that's a fantastic way to put it.
Maybe it benefits Dalinar, but it mostly benefits the reader.
Yeah.
Not him.
That's what a lot of it feels like. Again, with Kaladin, with Dalinar, is that Sanderson's writing through them knowing. I don't want to be unfair to say this because I know it's not true, but it feels like it. That Sanderson wrote this book for us rather than the story he wanted to say. I know that's not true. That Sanderson wrote the story he wanted, but it feels like he wrote the story that the readers wanted rather than the story he wanted. It's not true. but it feels that way. I'm saying it twice just to emphasize. That's what I'm left with. And the additional complaint too. Again, the scope's great. There's my pro. Okay, con again. Shinovar. I was excited to explore and see where Szeth was from and how different it is from Roshar, and ultimately got the tidbits of how plant life is there and that it's different. And
it's
then
basically Earth.
We went through the monasteries and okay.
Yeah. And that's kind of goes into a little bit plot, but also world
how they
building
worship the stones, and so some of their culture and the spren and what Ashar's connection, what Ashar now we're doing to mislead. So there is that. Again, it's more larger Cosmere stuff again of like why are the heralds doing this? You get those tidbits. I get it. But I guess as far as the place goes and like get it, that's all I got.
Yeah. It's not as interesting as it could have been. I will say, I think the flashbacks with Szeth are better than Venli's.
Okay.
If I want to be completely honest. So that's kind of a step up.
Nate?
I guess it was kind of better. I was a bit more invested with, we got a little bit of a subversion with, you see Szeth's character, how he is now, and you go, oh, what's his parents going to be like? No, he actually had great parents. He had a great dad, a great mother, like all these things, like ultimately, awesome family. It's very unfortunate childhood and everything that happens to him, but strong family behind him, and he had some good, important people in his life. But so that's kind of a subversion. Yeah. But yeah, ultimately,
nice, Szeth.
It's pretty good. I'll give that. I like the flashbacks well enough. Again, but the ultimate thing with Szeth being unable to determine what truth is, and that his hunt for that got a bit repetitive at times to me. Like I kind of got the point, and it was hit over the head a bit too much. Where I understand.
Oh, definitely.
So it dragged for me a bit long in the flashbacks. But.
Yes, I think too with I have my last point as well. I just want to see what you think on how much Roshar was built up versus the Cosmere. Did you want something but got something else?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so this is the common complaint with Lost Metal, the fourth book in Mistborn Era 2. I'm not giving you any, not giving any details, no spoilers, but the common complaint is that book is a Cosmere book, not a, Scadrial book. I kind of disagree. I think it does enough that where I'm very satisfied with the conclusion of it. More particularly, the reason I am is because I think it gave such satisfying conclusions for my characters of that series that I will overlook everything else. Like, that was most important to me. I was so satisfied with, we got endings for those characters, endings for the plot lines from this series. Very satisfied. And then a lot of setup for Cosmere level things. The fact that this was a lot of setup for Cosmere level things, and I was bored with the completion for a lot of these characters and the ultimate plot, that I was bored for most of it. That's where I will give more of a criticism for.
Got it.
Comparing that to Lost Metal.
Okay. So, are you excited then to continue in the Cosmere?
No, not at this point. I'll give it, I need a break. I need a Cosmere break.
A year out from now, would you be?
I mean, I'm not going to not put it. I'll read Sanderson again, see where it happens. But it definitely is not going to be like, book 6 comes out, I'm going to immediately pick it up. I'm going to kind of wait. Wait to hear what other people are saying about it, see if, Sanderson improves on the prose and writing, maybe he takes a bit more time. I'm hoping, dear Lord, for the love of God, someone needs to force that man to write a shorter book. At this point, it is a privilege to write incredibly long books. You need to earn it. Sanderson needs to earn that back.
He did earn it, though, for these books. I mean,
this book has knocked him down.
But the thing is, up to this point, he 100% earned the right to do like a 1,000,000-word book for me, just on the Stormlight alone, being, hey, he delivers. But you're right, the fact that this no longer delivers, what's the max word count he can get to now? That you'll allow. Where if it's okay, but let's talk Prose and answer that question, because what'd you give Prose out of 5 stars?
1.75. Very flawed.
I gave it a 2-star. Flawed Prose.
Yeah.
Definitely flawed Prose. And what would you? So what would your answer be to that? For what's the word count limit?
What would you tell me that this book is
This
at
is
right now?
490 something thousand words, under 500,000. Way of Kings is 380 something thousand.
300.
Oh, lower than Way of
I want
Kings.
lower.
Dang.
Less.
Stormlight
Less
Books
is more,
6.
Sanderson. Less is more. Do more with less pages.
Well, unless it's the earlier Stormlight stuff. I mean, that slaps when it's longer.
Yeah, but he needs to be... I think so much of this book is no one told him really no. New editor, all these things where he basically did everything he wanted. He's gotten to that, like... I know this is the common thing on Reddit and the internet in general, is saying that he's gotten to the Stephen King and George Lucas, George R. R. Martin level, where people won't tell him no. Like people talked about how George Lucas with the prequels, like he made Star Wars. No one, but the original trilogy had great editors, and he had people tell him no, don't do that. You need to make this. But where the prequels, he got to do whatever the hell he wanted. And
you become too big to be critiqued.
Yeah,
that's why we're here, because you're never too big for us, Sanderson. Or when Abercrombie was on here, you know what we said to him? We said,
I loved his books.
I
was all positive.
I was friendly and said, you know what? Don't like your last book.
Yeah.
So
no, but this book is...
I think there's something to that, though.
There's a general rule, like, you need to earn a very long book. Overall, most of the time, most books, constraints help an author. I don't think you need to have a 500,000 page book. You really need to earn it. And I think this just knocks it down to, like, do more with less. So much could have been on the cutting room floor. I think if he was forced to write this book in half the page count, or I don't know, two-thirds, yeah. 2/3 or half, he would have been forced to condense all of the world exposition stuff and be more tactful with it. He would have to force plot lines a bit more together, make the most important ones. It would have been more impactful if he could condense this book down and be forced to choose some stuff. But yeah. The reason, so all these characters are just separated, and we get these, like, all these plot lines are so far removed from each other. If this book was condensed, a lot of these things would have to be done together. Characters would have to be forced together, because you'd have to tell multiple plot lines kind of in the same vein. You wouldn't be able to just have them all apart and different, which I think would have ended up being a better story.
Especially with them having that many visions too.
Yeah,
so
you would have had
just that alone.
My guess is what you would have to do is combine, like, the visions be more interludes, and you basically cut all of the spiritual realm stuff to bare mention.
So Dalinar was in the spiritual realm for the vast majority of the book.
The entire book, yeah. And what you would have ended up with maybe Dalinar interacting with all the other characters and specifically spending time with Adolin, which is what really needed. You really needed Dalinar Adolin time.
Absolutely did.
Desperately needed. That was one of the biggest conflicts between characters in the entire book, and they're separated.
It's
nearly the entire
time with Dalinar being in God form and sending one last, "Hey, I'm sorry, Adolin."
And Adolin going, just like, in my final moments, I felt it. No, weak sauce.
That's the resolution.
No. It's pitiful. That's a pitiful resolution to that conflict.
It is. That's more so plot stuff too. But with his, I guess, do you want me to quote the man himself? Because he did talk at length on Reddit. His Reddit username is Mistborn, about editing this book. And this is from the man himself, and we can give your feedback of what you think based on what he said here. So he responds to one person here that's saying Brandon needs to be edited more. And then what his answer to this of, hey, you need to be edited more, Sanderson says this: I assure you, I'm editing more now than I ever have been. Or I'm edited more now than I ever have been. So I don't believe editing is the issue some people are having. Tress and Sunlit, for example, were written not long ago and are both quite tight as a narrative. Both were edited less than Stormlight 5. Writing speed isn't a problem either, as the fastest I've ever been required to write was during the Gathering Storm / Way of Kings era, and those are books that are generally, by comparison, not talked about the same way as, say, Rhythm of War. The issue is story scope expansion. Stormlight in particular has a lot going on. I could see some people wishing for tighter narratives of the first 2 books, but there are things I can do with this kind of story I couldn't do with those. I like a variety, and this is the story I want to tell here, despite being capable of doing it in other ways. Every scene was one I wanted in the book, and sometimes I feel sometimes I like to do different things for different readers. I got the same complaints about the way I did Bridge 4 individual viewpoints in Oathbringer, for example. There were a lot of suggestions that I should cut them during editorial and early reads, and I refused, not because there's no validity to these ideas, but because this was the story I legitimately wanted to tell. That said, we did lose Moshe as an editor, largely, and he was excellent at line editing in particular. I see a complaint about Wood and Truth having more average show than tell moments, which is my term for when you repeat the ideas too many times, not for reinforcement, but to write your way into a concept and do it weekly as you're discovering it. So your subconscious has you do it again a few paragraphs or pages later and do it well, but then you forget to cut the first one. And this is something I'll have to look at. Plus, I feel that we have been rushed as a team ever since Gathering Storm. That's a long time to be in semi-crisis mode and getting books ready the last few months before publication. We largely, as a company, do a good job of avoiding crunch time for everyone except a little during the year, depending on the department, the convention, for example, et cetera, et cetera. So, however, part of the reason I wanted to slow things down a little is to give everyone a little more time and hopefully less stress, so I can't completely discount all these comments out of hand, and I do appreciate the conversation. So that's one of his comments there. What are your thoughts, Rich, on the editing, the scope that's gotten larger, and all that?
So I do want to touch on the editing aspect of it. I don't know how present this was in previous books, but I believe in an interview with Esquire, he talked about specifically having sensitivity editors go through, like sensitivity readers go through and just like point out like if something's handled incorrectly or if it's handled sensitively enough. Basically, what I saw is there's in that one he talked about like LGBTQ representation, and for specifically, it's representation in this way. The amount of times it's just casually mentioned, then we move aside, like just
we didn't talk about that.
We didn't even talk about
we
it,
didn't
but
mention that. But
that's a part of the editing where when I hear sensitivity readers, I just automatically I don't think it's generally a good idea because it felt like handling a lot of these issues with kid gloves of hey, look, here's a thing, and then we're gonna not do anything with it. We're gonna push it aside, and just the first one, I remember it, and it was just like, interesting. Then we're not going to go into this any further. Fine. The sibling talking with one of the Ardents, Navani's engineers, and basically not really that subtly going like, yeah, the person is trans in some version, or non-binary.
I understand more than you know, like what it's like to be like not man or
woman.
And
then moving along, okay, and then where do you go? Like it felt just tossed in, like this was clearly...
Did it feel more pandering than it did that?
It felt pandering rather than actual exploring the idea.
No, I 100% agree
rather than
with
making
you.
them an actual character.
No, I 100% agree with you, because people will complain about that, be like, call homophobe or all sorts of things, because like, oh, you don't like when things that aren't da-da-da are in a book. I mean, for an example, Time War does... I mean, part of the plot, it's a great book, but it's just to give a preference, like Everything Ever at Once is my second favorite film ever, behind Lord of the Rings, because that's the GOAT. But that's, I mean, primarily, literally lesbian character, and Tar, another fantastic film. Again, not that it has to be a central plot point, but it's not bad for the sake that, oh, look, you have that in the book. Bad. I don't want to see that in my books. It's the
weird.
fact
that's all they are as a character, and
it's reduced.
Hey, let's mention like, hey, look, they're represented, and we move along. And they're not a character. It's just stapled in. You could have removed it, and nothing would have changed. And that's a problem. I would rather it be like actually
again,
important,
making it more concise,
making it an important character. Where like Renarin being gay in this story generally makes sense. He's an actual character and not just
The problem with him is more the conflict.
He's gay. The problem with him is you remove all of the conflict from.
And again, but is that him kind of touching it with like gloves and going like, oh, I don't want to
offend.
I don't want to offend
everyone
anybody.
Here
so let's
is,
be careful.
Everyone here is so accepting. No one's against it, and that's like
it comes across that way because it's like, okay, then where's the substance?
You have the Adeline moment when he's in not Shinovar, but whatever the city is.
What not Shinovar? So Adeline in Azir,
where he's recruiting people, and then basically comes how the Azir going like, oh, hey, where'd you get those muscles on you, woman? Like, how'd you get that? Like, you look real built, like you're real strong. How'd you get those muscles? And she's like, I'm a blacksmith, sir. Like, been working all the time. It's like, well, hey, you're gonna be uncomfortable. Like, if I recruit you, you're just gonna have to know you're gonna be in an uncomfortable situation with all the guys. I hope you just need to accept that. I just want you to know it beforehand. It's like, yep, I know. I got my papers. That's already good. He's like, papers. And then leans over. It's like, oh, she has her papers to like live as a man. I'm like, and he's like, oh, well, they do things weird here in Azir, and moving on. I'm like, again, it's stapled on. It doesn't add anything. It's just clearly added to be kind of pandering. And to me, kind of demeaning. That's
Here's
all they are.
Yeah.
Here's a thing. Hey, look, did I do good? Look at this. They exist. Awesome. And we move along.
Yeah.
And it just felt kind of beaten over your
also
head.
Also talking about that dress like this.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's just...
Isn't that great?
That's just poetry.
Isn't it?
That's poetry right there. Because we've been dressing this so long,
yeah.
I'm not even remembering. And then I just took a second to go, wait a second. You and then I just looked at you. That was a beautiful moment. No, but I totally
especially
agree with you.
with this world of... It doesn't make sense. There should be some degree like this.
I mean, slavery existed 2 years ago. Or doesn't it still exist?
It still exists. This is not like, oh, we're all happy and getting along. Slavery literally existed 30 seconds ago.
You could literally see.
This is not 2025 America. Like, no, slavery was literally a thing like less than a year ago. We're just moving on. No, you don't get to do that, Sanderson. You set up a world. You can't just like drop of a hat. Everyone's like, yeah, add in all these new like progressive stuff that did not fit with the world before. And we're just not going to acknowledge that. We're not even going to address just moving along. It's lazy to me. You compare that to something like, what's the right term differently? Like handicap representation with
Ryson
in Dawnshard. Fantastically handled. Like actually a wonderful moment of her going like,
do you like it more since we last talked about the book?
Yeah, I liked it a lot more.
Was it after we didn't win a drink? You looked back?
Way more.
What would you give it now?
You know what? I don't know what I gave it before at this point. I'd have to look back, but at least a 4.
Yeah. That's what I give it.
Yeah. But actually exploring the idea of, wow, we have characters now that are flying all over, and what is the best solution we have for someone who can't use their legs? Like a worse version of a wheelchair. Like it's quite literally a regular chair with like some wheels that people basically have to carry. They can't even move themselves. And like, yeah, how does she handle it? And then we use the magic system to like augment and help. And how does she handle that emotionally, mentally? And
that's a great book. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. Like it's not, her being handicapped is not just plastered on, like slapped on the front of the character. Like, look, it's a handicapped one and moving on. No, she's a real character with actual drive, ambition, flaws, wants, needs, like real character.
What would you say to them? Why can't it just be there? Why can't someone just be that in the world?
You can,
because of
if you set up with the world. Compare something like a bunch of sci-fi books do it well because a lot of it is setting, like what setting is it in, what did you set up, like
Sun Eater does it.
Sun Eater does it all the time, and from book 1 it's kind of set up and it makes sense in the world, and that aspect of is not their entire character. Just making like again, it's like, oh, the token gay character. It's lazy. It's pandering. I don't want to see it. It's like, again, it's the MCU type stuff of that's lazy character working. And I don't want to give him credit for it.
Do you want me to read the next part of his response here?
Go ahead.
And by the way, yeah, agree. Agree. So this next part about his editing and what he's put, so you're talking about how he's just adding stuff in for the prose.
I'm talking specifically about the sensitivity readers.
Got it.
In general, if you're going to make a novel and you're trying to like be careful to people's sensitivities, I just generally think it's a bad road to go down. Like, oh, I'm trying not to offend anyone. Well, you're not going to please anyone at that rate. Well, make it something. Some people should be a little bit of offended.
Well, again, where it's coming
Some
from,
people
write the story.
disagree.
Write the story you want to write. Again, that's why. I guess that's another part of that subconsciously why I'm thinking this is he's writing for people. It just feels like a lot of that MCUification, that brownie points, that adding on to the point that this feels different. Then, like if it was just him and he was isolated and writing Wave Kings.
I cannot stress this point that slavery was a thing for these people.
That's what I was telling you.
Less than a year ago. And yet they're all... poor setup. And again, I kind of put that into World. The reason why
I get it.
The World is only good and not could be great and amazing. It just feels so lazy of a setup for these people's cultures and everything that came before.
Here's the next portion that somebody commented on. This is on Reddit. Master_Eldekar said this. Editing. To be fair, this is his response to Sanderson's response, and somebody else said this. So, to be fair, lots of people are struggling with the sudden increase in modernism in prose. So exactly what we're getting at here. And same thing, jarring, breaking that world. So, I don't remember all the examples, but they include phrases like just a sec, gang up, and he is on another level. Would you say that's just a stylistic choice or an honest mistake, which I guess is not a big deal and sometimes simply happen? And Sanderson said, good question, and I've noticed this criticism. I'll watch it in the future Stormlight books, but I can't say that I think Wind and Truth is much beyond my other novels. I just went back and reread the first few chapters of Elantris, and to me, they use the same conversational, modern tone in the dialogue as you see in Wind and Truth. I feel like this hasn't changed, and I've been getting these criticisms since the early days, with phrases like homicidal hat trick in Arrow 1 Mistborn, or even okay instead of all right in Elantris. I think his examples there, by the way, aren't nearly as jarring as the words in this book, just as a side. But I use Tolkien's philosophy as a fantasy diction, even though I don't use his stylings. The dialogue is in translation done by me from their original form in the Cosmere. You don't think people back in the Middle Ages said things like, just a sec? Sure, they might have had their own idioms and contractions, but if you were speaking to them in their tongue at the time, I'm convinced it would sound modern. Werner Vinge, one of my favorite sci-fi authors, that's correct take, Sanderson. Sanderson, still love you. took this approach in A Fire Upon the Deep. Oh, another fantastic, thank you, Sanderson, great book. Making the very alien aliens talk in what feels like a very conversational... Sorry, hair. Feels like a very conversational, everyday English with one another. A way of saying they are not some unknown strange group. They are people like you, and if you could understand them as intimately as they understand each other, it would feel like this. The thing is, one of my biggest comparisons in fiction is George R.R. Martin, who prefers a deliberately elegant, antiquated style punctuated by proper vulgarities, of course, for his fantasy as much as Robert Jordan did and Sapkowski still does. They'll reverse clause orders to give slightly more formal feel to sentences. They'll drop contractions in favor of full write-outs, sometimes where it doesn't feel awkward. They'll use older versions of words, again, when it doesn't feel awkward, and rearrange explanations to fit uses of the word whom. All very subtle ways of writing, essentially, to make it give that old, antiquated feel. I'll summarize a little bit, but it's more like an actual 1800s flair, and it feels more antiquated. So in this, they prefer Tolkien stylings, not just his philosophy, though the few could get away with his going as far as he did. This is a very 80s and 90s style for fantasy, while I generally favor more science fiction authory style coming from people like Isaac Asimov or Kurt Vonnegut and Orwell, as I've mentioned before. I'm writing about groups generally in the middle of industrial revolutions undergoing political upheaval as they modernize with access to worldwide instantaneous communication, Sans and Cell, gives examples. So yes, it's a stylistic choice, but within reason. If I'm consistently kicking people out of the books with it, then I'm likely still doing something wrong and perhaps perhaps should re-examine. I do often in Stormlight cut okay in favor of all right, and other things to give it just a slightly more antiquated feel, but I don't go full George R. R. Martin. Perhaps the answer is then this. It's a mix in general. This is my stylistic choice, but I'll double check that I'm not going too far and maybe take a little more care. While I can disagree with the fans, that doesn't mean an individual is wrong for their interpretation of a piece of art. You get to decide if this is too far, and I'll decide if I should reevaluate when I hit book 6. That said, if it helps you, remember that this is a translation by English from someone doing their best to evoke the tone of what the characters are saying in their own language, and someone who perhaps sometimes errs on the side of familiarity with the favor of humanization.
Yeah, the argument to that is he was comparing himself to Elantris, which, again, it's not particularly the point people are trying to make. Is this is drastically different from the previous book and all of the other Stormlight books. It's completely different. It's a very different thing of Elantris being set up initially, like being more modern language. Fine, that's from the very beginning. Fine, if you want to do that, great. That's a stylistic choice. It's different when you're going from this whole series where you take careful care to not really use modern curse words in place of fantasy-made curse words and words that really wouldn't exist, like doing your general best. Like, it's still fairly modern. Like, yeah, he's not that George R. R. Martin kind of level or, Tad Williams or anything like that. But generally, it's consistent with the world he set up. But from book 4 to book 5, it's one day. It's one day later, and it feels completely modern. The therapist, like, God, what a terrible line. Like, who are you?
I gave you a shorter answer he has, because this commenter also says, I'm just trying to get these comments out to react to these.
I don't know.
Here's the term like dating, because this commenter says, seconding this, a massive issue, and when in truth, Syl calling someone a tool, Kaladin quipping about being a therapist, exactly what you're talking about, and Adolin talking about dating when it used to be courting in earlier books, etc. It lends the whole thing so much more of a YA or Marvel feel than I found extremely disappointing. I got used to it after a time, but I couldn't shake the feeling throughout the preview chapters that it felt like fan fiction.
There was the moment with Syl Kaladin was talking about cryptics and all these things. Yeah. It's like, oh, what's your name? Like, is it a number? Is that kind of like a cryptic? And Syl's like, that's racist, Kaladin. And it kind of took me going like, that's never been a thing in Roshar? Like, at any of the level.
Light eyes, dark eyes.
It's light eyes, dark eyes. There's been no, at all, like, mention of actual people seeing people as different races. Like, they look different, but no one's acknowledged that. There's never been form of race. It's just so jarring. Like, all you had to do is replace that word with, that's really bigoted of you or something. Like, change the word, but there's not really much of a concept of race on Roshar that we've been given.
It's not a believable part of the world. Like, oh, I didn't realize that was a significant issue in Roshar, like the light eyes, dark eyes, and even after what he's kind of saying in his answer here is it's modernizing and the communication's happening so quickly that society is moving that quickly. But again, within such a small period of time, and also the language itself changing that drastically, because his answer to this Marvelization a bit and the modernism of like using phrases like dating and so forth. I'm so sorry. I just lost it as I was pulling that up. Let me go find that again. Whoops. That got it. Okay. So nope, lost it again. Whoops.
Control F.
Let's no, I completely lost the screen. Let me go find that.
You lost the screen.
Here we go. Boom. And here it is.
Okay.
He says, this is good feedback. I'm never quite sure what the line is, as what I mentioned above is true. I don't feel like I'm doing this more than I used to, but knowing key points that feel off to people is helpful. I do think part of the problem here is that Marvel, and really The Rise of Skywalker, beat this style of quipping to the ground and killed it, which is making people super sensitive to it. It works really well in specific cases and is a legitimate form of humor, but the tides of what works can absolutely change and can be exacerbated if media overdoes it. I've wondered why people start calling this YA style over the years, and I've begun to think perhaps it's the pipeline of Buffy to bad CW shows imitating Buffy to younger authors raised on those shows using it. Thing is, you'll find it going back to the early 1900s of media and is largely responsible for a lot of very iconic moments. So it's not a YA thing inherently. Witness No Ticket from Indiana Jones is an excellent example of the quip undercutting the dramatic moment with a visual punchline of people racing their tickets as an example of this working really well done before the Marvel era. Well, that and the iconic shooting the swordsman moment. These, if used well once in a while, really help exhausting action sequences have a breather. But then media really started overusing them to the point that no dramatic moments are allowed to exist without a joke, which in turn I think makes people so annoyed at them that they rebel against them all. Anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to know, but if it helps, this is the sort of thing I spend hours thinking about, and the feedback is absolutely helpful. So that was his response to the Marvel feel about things.
Yeah, well,
didn't strike the balance for us.
Didn't do it.
So I want, those are all the thoughts I'll get out there.
He is probably right that it is definitely just, I'm jaded against it in general. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just don't want to see it. If I start seeing it, I'm just like, get away. I've seen too much of it and I'm tired of it. And it's also done poorly that I'm averted to it in general. So
the main criticism here is the amount of words, the not being concise, the modern language, the more so to me, I think the worst of all of it really is the dialogue and the heavy-handedness of like, how do you feel? And not letting dialogue or scenes develop what feels naturally. Mm-hmm. Many of the characters and how we get to the next plot point is just so in your face, not subtle.
The character says exactly how they feel. They understand themselves perfectly.
Yeah.
You can't have a little bit of the characters confused on what they think and not able to properly express it, or they think the wrong thoughts.
I like in the Prose section to always come with at least one example. There's plenty in here, but I have one on page 434, just an example of what the prose is like here. So, go to war, Zeth said, with your own brain. And this is obviously, I'll give context, this is in the scene of attacking those warrior thoughts. Okay. Yeah. So Cal is saying to Zeth, like, use warrior thoughts to get rid of those bad thoughts. Go to war, Zeth said, with your own brain. Yeah, kind of, Kaladin said. He sighed, searching for the best words. You know how when you're first starting to learn to fight, you don't have any instincts? What do? Train, Zeth said. Train over and over and over until the proper response comes the moment you need it. It's like that, Kaladin said. When the wrong thoughts come in, you need to be ready, not only to rebuff them, but to present the right thoughts instead. Warrior thoughts, to resist the bad ones. How can you be sure what is right, though? Zeth asked. Your own mind has created both good thoughts and bad. You need something external, something unchanging, like the law, to guide you. That is what my Spren teaches. Maybe Spren can be wrong, Kaladin said. Zeth put his head down, walking faster. Why do you even care? I took oaths, Kaladin said, hurrying to catch up. I took oaths too. Zeth, like even that, I took oaths too, Zeth said with a flippant wave of his fingers. Mine are the law. Why do yours matter more? That stopped Kaladin, who paused on the earthen road as Zeth continued on. It was true. Their oaths, their orders, conflicted. Was there something higher than an oath? It was difficult to imagine that being true. Zeth, Kaladin called after him. How do you feel? Zeth halted on the path, dust on his white trousers. He looked back. How do you feel? Kaladin asked again. Awful, Zeth whispered, barely audible. I should be able to stamp that emotion out, but I can't. I feel awful. All the time. You? Better, Kaladin said. Lately, better. Really? Truly? Honestly? Kaladin nodded. Well, I suppose that's something, Zeth said, turning and continuing on. Warrior thoughts, you say, preparing in your head to counter the Dark Ones when they attack. Curious. Before much long, and then end scene. But point being, the back and forth between them, even like in that dialogue, is like, how do you feel? And then repeats, how do you feel? Oh, I feel this way. You, how about you, Kaladin? And Kaladin responds. Just part of that is I guess what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a decent example to bring up for
a decent example, yeah.
For the common complaints in there and just why I didn't come across with the nuance, the gravitas. And that being said, you know, as much as hey, we're sitting in our high horse critiquing this whole book, just remember, if you have any complaints, he did give it a lower score. And if you really did hate the book and you agree with us, remember, I also gave it a low score. So no matter what, just let me odium this and just whatever those comments are down there. Just
do you think we have the lowest score on BookTube for Wind and Truth at this point?
Your 1.75, I think, is.
Yeah.
My 2.5, I think, like, you and Matt, and there's a couple like 3s out there, I think. But the thing is, our rating system as well, when specifically saying we don't give a 3-star or something like that people do, because like it's a Stormlight book, the accomplishment, like the meta behind it and the thoughts, and going objectively, Sanderson did write a book that was logical, had this conclusion. I was disappointed by it, but it had a lot of people
we have specific things of what we are judging it, and when
it's that word. It's
that word.
Were
for
we disappointed?
I was taken out of the story. I think the characters felt very hollow shells of what they used to be.
Yep.
That many of them are very replaceable at this point in the story. I struggled a lot with rating this, of going like, do I really think it's that bad?
So didn't your rating start a lot higher?
It did. 15 minutes after finishing the book, my gut reaction was like the most disappointing 4 out of 5. That's where I started. Like, that was like 15
How far
minutes.
you have fallen.
15 minutes after finishing it, and then just having to go through point by point and remember, like, am I really going to give a book I wanted to DNF a 4 out of 5? Can I really do that? Like, for emotional impact, did I have any out loud, like, exciting moment? No, not really. The closest I came was Adeline's, like, unoathed, armed up. Okay, kind of excited, like, but that was the closest, and it didn't land as it really should have for me. But almost everything was kind of undercut. Even the stuff I liked, where there was just a hard cut at the end of it, of liking all the stuff with Yasna, and then it being confirmed afterward that actually, she failed, but she would have failed no matter what. It wasn't her fault, really. Like, just Odium outplayed her. Different. Kind of undercuts my enjoyment from that scene and all the stuff it sets up for a character. Odium finally, wiping out Carbranth to show, to not be blackballed by cultivation, to prove that he, like, believes that the ends justify the means, that he's willing to sacrifice his city, everything he's loved, for basically what he believes is right.
Thanos moment with Gamora.
Yeah, and then just take it away. Actually, everyone lives in the
Imagine
spiritual.
Gamora's alive. Takes away Thanos' sacrifice, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Constantly of that. Awesome. I can't believe we didn't even mention this.
What?
Taln.
Oh,
set up.
Yeah, I had that in my notes too.
Yeah. That's probably where I'm most frustrated. Okay, again, combine a couple factors here. Mm-hmm. This is a 1,300-page book. You got time. You got the space for it, Sanderson, and you set up for 5 books. Taln being the best fighter Roshar has ever seen, that he has withstood torment on Prose for thousands of years.
And
Taln
officially never gave up.
Broke. He never broke.
Yep.
Epic fights. Everyone's terrified of him. He is the fighter of all heralds. He is God amongst men. Gods are afraid of Taln. And we get, Taln's coming. Like, I was actually excited. I was tingling a little bit. Going like, Taln is going to fight off the singers, like, going, oh yeah, we're going to get a Taln fight. Yes. Cut to black. Damn it. God damn it. No. Cut back. And Taln died, but he slaughtered. Like, look how cool this could have been. Don't you wish you saw that scene? Don't you wish you got that one? No. Yes, Anderson, I did wish it. I did want that scene. Why'd you cut that one? Why'd you take that from us? All of this setup and just, no. There's a plot point. It's a plot convenience at the end of the day. How are the humans going to win now?
You're so right.
Fuck. Yeah. Why? Set up the heralds are awesome fighters. Nail versus Kaladin. Yes. Who's gonna win? The new one or the old? And fuck no, no.
You almost go SpongeBob.
No, please, for the love of God. But how can you do this to Sanderson? How do you set up Talon's fight and just being the most epic of fight scenes, slaughtering all these singers, and just the level, he's wiped out armies. Skip it. Who needs to see that one? Why would you want to see that?
It's almost like he had a TV show budget and he was trying to save money. It's like you don't have a budget.
You don't have. It's 1,300 pages. 1,300 pages. God damn it.
No, it's not. It is 1,329.
1,329 goddamn pages. You had the time. You had the page count.
Oh, I can't wait to see the mass market.
Fuck.
Oh, how big's that gonna be?
That's gonna be a chunker.
They can't they can't legally sell that.
This was half the page length, and he was being tight with it, and he was constrained, and going hey, I got a lot to do here. Fine. Maybe a little bit of justification of cutting out the Talon fight scene, which, no, you shouldn't have. You said, come on, this is epic, high-action fantasy. Gotta give it to us. But no, 1,300 pages. You can fit it in there. You could have fit it in there. But no. Why would we want that? Why would we ever want that?
Question. Is there a world where Talon could have been in the Contest of Champions? Could that have happened?
Sure, why not?
I mean, I want to ask you this because a lot of critiques. What would you have done? I mean, I'm giving like a minute to answer this.
Sure.
What would you have done
to the contest?
Contest for something that you would have changed? I guess contest specifically. What would you do to make the whole thing more awesomeness? I didn't mean to sound like Lift, but I did.
Yeah, I like Lift.
Yeah, she's cool, but she's a little annoying.
Here's the thing.
She hits her miss. This book, I did not like her. This book.
Lift humor is fun in little bits. Like just Lift having Lift humor.
No, not in this book.
Except
this book.
I like
this book. Was
it's a little bit of levity.
No.
Everyone having Lift humor. Yeah. Too much. Too much.
Need some Laura Lopen humor. Yeah. He's funny. But what would your contest be? How would you improve the book?
I don't know. I'm going to turn it back. You answer it first.
What?
Yeah.
You can't just Spider-Man me.
I can.
What the hell is that shit?
What would you do?
Definitely not Gavinor. Now the rules of the contest being Odium has to find a willing participant.
I think the end result is correct in the sense of the contest is broken. In some factor, like the deal is broken and Odium is free. And I like the ending of Dalinar realizing like,
I got it.
Crap.
I fucking got it.
Outplayed.
I fucking got it. I would have loved to see it. Like, because it doesn't take changing, like, take what Sanderson did in Wind and Truth, right? It's slight alterations. Because yes, you could write a whole different book, a whole different plot line that's not set up, but using what he set up. What if the Contest of Champions was Kaladin failed to cure Szeth, and it was Kaladin versus Szeth in the Contest of Champions? Like you alter it a bit, but that whole storyline that was boring the whole time, and you make Kaladin and Szeth
slight change.
Yeah.
You know how the King of Heralds basically he was taking a bit of Odium's power. He was from using Odium's well. He found some of that power and Ishar. Yeah, and then we got the little bit of Ishar versus Kaladin fight.
Something like that.
Because then Odium would say, "Hey, look, he took some of my power." Even if he's like he's my champion, Kaladin that could have been the championship.
But I'm trying to think of something emotional.
Then Kaladin loses that fight.
Oh, and Dalinar breaks it.
And then instead of losing, Dalinar goes, Kaladin's going to lose. Break the contest. Maybe that would be.
I'm just thinking of trying to make what's already there more interesting. And like,
sure.
I think with Szeth to me was just a nothing burger. So I'm trying to think of something that would make him, turn him into more of I just saw where everything was going. So having some conflict or some interpersonal thing where the duel had a stake, like an emotional stake, because I think Ishar, very threatening, but no emotional stake. Gavinor and Dalinar had the emotional thing, but no fight or threat, but also Gavinor aged up and was like a magic thing that happened. So also the emotion we saw him grow up, and so there also wasn't that entire emotional stake. It's what would be a contest where, you know how Kaladin uses the flute and like kind of put that into the contest a bit, where Kaladin's arc as well, he learns it in the Contest of Champions. Like it's integrated there. He still has a lesson to learn. And Szeth does maybe I don't know. Anything else. I'll storyboard with Sanderson. We'll think about it.
Yeah,
we'll do the rewrite.
You'll work it out.
Well, is that your answer though? The Ishar Kaladin? Maybe Tolan in there. Tolan would be epic.
Thing is,
I don't know.
I like the ending. Ultimately, it's just how we get there that was really underwhelming.
Well, I don't like the Gavinar part, no matter what.
Sure, but I like Dalinar breaking breaking the oath and breaking the agreement and making the Sunmaker's Gambit. Good plan. Also giving Odium more power to make him the most powerful being, deliberately to provoke all the other shards.
Actually, I don't like something about it now, because about the thought-provokingness of the finale, Dalinar's lesson with breaking the oath of like there's a higher ideal. Mm-hmm. Maybe more of the message should be like your oaths and promises, like you take them complete. His whole thing about accepting his pain in book 3, maybe accepting the consequences of breaking your oath, like more focused on keep your vows and your oaths, especially the ones that you committed to the oath because with your full heart you made the promise. It's a marriage. You don't get married and then take that away lightly. Yeah. There must be the reasons amongst all reasons to ever get divorced. You don't take that oath lightly. And with Dalinar, maybe the breaking of the oath, instead of like, hey, there's a higher ideal, it's more so the consequence of understanding that what he's doing is more focused on the consequences of breaking the oath than, oh, look, it's the thing above that.
How much did you really like that basically everyone basically abdicated responsibility in some way? That Dalinar's lesson was like he takes too much responsibility and he's going to abdicate responsibility to the rest of the Cosmere. Like, I'm not enough. That everyone's telling me to stop being king and stop being such a big leader. Like, you need to think let everyone else also in on the decision. So he abdicates responsibility for the rest of the Cosmere. What does Jasnah do? Jasnah steps down, basically, like, I can't be leader. Renarin, I can't be leader.
I like Jasnah's. I'll stand behind that.
Hey, let's throw it to the council. Like, I'm not going to lead. I'm not going to lead. Adeline basically going like, yeah, I'm not going to lead. Just everyone going like, yeah, I'm not leading. I'm not taking charge. Just put that to let the people do it. Yeah, I'm not good enough for it. I can't do it. I'm not going to take responsibility.
I think that's what
everyone. Kaladin basically are like, oh, it's okay to not take like if you should have the option to fight. It's like, well, the fate of the world.
Can I go lower than 1.5 stars for my thought provoking?
That's also part of a thought provoking. Is like everyone should have the choice to fight, and like that should be, they should have the choice. It's like, yeah, in a perfect world, but also like in the fate of the world is at stake. Like Zeth was kind of right. Like going like everyone's gonna die unless I like help and fight. Like I have you have a responsibility to do these kind of things. Like I don't think if your entire nation, your entire people's under threat, I do think you actually do kind of have an obligation to step up, even if you don't want to. That is, I don't know.
Kind of like
I'm not like personally, I'm not that opposed to the concept of the draft in military. Like if your nation is being attacked.
Well, the issue there comes to issue there comes to what's the reason for the war? Who's deciding to send you to war?
But
so it's more than that.
The concept of you and your people are being attacked. You don't get to just actually, no, I'm not going to help anyone else. I think you do have an obligation to other people. You don't get to just
maybe a smaller example of that too is maybe you're on a beach and somebody needs CPR and you're capable of giving CPR.
Yeah.
And you're the only one there. And you walk away and say there's some obligation to know you should help your fellow man. Like, don't just leave the person there. So yeah, I see what you're saying, but also I'm trying to think back to thought provokingness of I can't go lower than 1.5, can I? I can't do that. I can't. I mean, I hate it. Anyways. Yeah. So, Sanderson, we would love to interview you.
Hey, that's a trend. We keep interviewing authors that we either one or both of us have like a negative score for the book.
The conversation would be a million times better. A million than before reading Wind and Truth. The reason being, before reading Wind and Truth, I didn't have much of substance to say to him other than I love you.
Yeah.
And you're my inspiration and just babbling and also the nerves being there. Now talking to Sanderson, I would not be nervous at all anymore. Reason being, I saw the chink in my hero's armor. Because when you see somebody as infallible, why I was so nervous seeing Pierce Brown, even though there's a couple books I didn't like in Red Rising, but I love the series, love like, oh my God, 5 stars everywhere. But it's just seeing somebody that you see as infallible and that, oh my God, you put them on this pedestal, and finally saying, like, you know what? You're not perfect. It's a lot easier to talk to.
Turn it around. Not always true with like Christopher Rocchio. I was so nervous about it and going like, oh my God, and meeting him actually and going out the door with him. Like, this guy's like one of my favorite living authors. Love him. And as we talked to him, like, he's still perfect. And yeah, I got a lot more comfortable.
Because you talked to him afterwards. But I'm saying that initial, because we never talked to Sanderson. So it's that initial talk.
That initial,
and why I wasn't nervous around Rocchio. 5 stars, Howling Dark, fucking loved it. But his first book, I was like, you know what? You'll get there one day, Rocchio. He got there the next book.
He got the next book.
Like, well, it took him 1 book. So that's the impressive part. It takes a lot of authors their whole lifetime. It took him 1 try. And then the second one, he banged it. But so that's why I was with Rocchio. But for Sanderson, also the conversation now, I would just want to pick his brain about like this whole thing and be like, did you think about this? Like, who are you as a person? What's your, like, what grinds your, what your
magic
Sanderson?
System? How do you see the difference between,
go on. Go on.
What do you see the difference between surge binding and the allomancy?
Yes.
Of how much that allomancy has all these hard rules where basically surge binding is at this point, oh, the windrunners can fly. Yeah. They can make the gravity things, and it's like, that's about it. And then disappearance, like it's kind of lame. Yeah. It's just so. What I also thought was kind of insulting is how many surge binding disciplines there are, and we basically just get the 2 in windrunners, and then the
we get edge dancers and edge dancer.
Kind of like we get a little bit, but the fact that we got all the stuff with Zeth in just these mini boss battles of like, hey, look at this cool thing that we could have had, but like we're just gonna get you're gonna get a little taste of it at the very end, and then it's been high, and then moving on. Then that's this example. Like, hey, look, this one's the fire one, and this one's the stone one, and this one's like. When do we get these now?
I wonder what people are thinking right now. Are they pissed off, like going like, stop making fun of it? Or are they going like, yeah, Rich, get them? Like, I don't know, but it's going to be fun. And also, time will tell how this book sits in the history books, because it is historical in that way. It will be one of those series looked back on as generational, as defining of the 2010s, just first 5. And beyond that, when the next come out, regardless, because it's already had that staple. Sanderson, I guess, if anybody clips anything from this,
there's a lot of visual clips. Like just the entire thing is
the whole thing. But Rich, if somebody clipped something to Sanderson, like what's your message to him? What would you say? Message to Sanderson. If he only saw 1 minute of this.
I respect you, man, as an author, as a businessman. For me, this was a swing and a miss. I'm hoping you knock it out of the park next time, but this wasn't it, Chief. At least for me. I hope it was for everyone else, but wasn't it for me.
Well said, Rich. I you know what? Our channel goal is still interviewing him. That's still on the table. That's a life goal of ours. It's a channel goal of ours. I feel like we improved our chances. That seems to be the trend. Because when we give a negative review of an author's book, we see them shortly. You're welcome, by the way, because I gave Abercrombie the negative review.
And then we got,
So that's how we did it. Finally, we both did, so we'll both take credit. We both gave a negative review. So,
but thing is, I'm now just so positive to read on. Like I like talking with her so much. I'm going, you know what? Rocchio got the 1 book. I'm going like, okay. And then next book knocked it out of the park. So
we'll see. Shot. Yeah.
I'm hoping to do that pretty soon. I want to do it sometime in February if I can.
Okay, awesome.
Hopefully I'll fit it in. I don't think you'll read it next. I'll let you know what I think.
Question for you though: how do you feel that this review is officially our longest and longer than Lonesome Dove?
It's appropriate.
Okay.
It's acceptable. If any review should be longer than the Lonesome Dove one.
It's the book that's.
This is the series that started it all for us. Mm-hmm. We should have this deserved it.
If you all want to join us for book clubs, check our Patreon down below. We talked Ministry several times. We'll always be talking Stormlight stuff. Our book club of the month, again, Blood Over Brighthaven. Remember, check out the Skillshare link in the description below. First 500 people click that link, get Skillshare 1 month free premium. And other than that, Rich, how would you conclude? This has been a journey. Hopefully the destination was worth it.
We'll find out, I guess. I'm done. We're done with Sanderson. I'm done reading Sanderson for another year. We'll check back in 2026.
What if I start reading Era 2, then we review him?
No,
don't want to review?
Please don't. No.
But you like Era 2.
I do, but no more Sanderson.
Era 2, we'll see you soon.
No! No more. Bye, everyone.